City of Palm Coast City Council workshop meeting. It's 9:01 and Tuesday, April the 9th, 2024. We are in the community wing of City Hall, and I thank each of you for taking the time to visit with us and listen to the workshop today. So with that, I would ask you all to please stand and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. Following the pledge, you're welcome to remain standing for a moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or pause for a moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I thank you all. If I could ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Alfin.
Present.
Vice Mayor Danko.
Here.
Councilmember Hyder.
Present.
Councilmember Clufus.
Present.
Councilmember Pontieri.
Present.
All members are present.
Thank you. As this is a workshop this morning, we begin the agenda with our public participation. In order for city staff to be able to respond to your questions or concerns, please fill out a comment card with your contact information. The comment cards can be found on the table near the agendas or available from the Communications and Marketing Director seated in the back. Anyone wishing to speak may approach the podium, provide their name, and may speak for up to 3 minutes. Please direct all comments to the mayor, be concise and to the point. Avoid delaying or interrupting the proceedings, and do not make any irrelevant, impertinent, or slanderous comments. Any person who becomes disorderly may be barred from making any additional comments and may be removed. And with that, I would ask, are there any members of the public that would like to address me at this time? Okay. If you pull that so it's comfortable for you, so we can hear. Perfect.
Good morning. My name is Maria Delgado, and I am the founder and director of Culinary Wellness, and I am here seeking the support and sponsor of the council and the mayor for our second annual Children's Business Fair. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah?
thank you. I appreciate that.
I am seeking the support and the sponsorship of the council and the mayor for the second annual Children's Business Fair that I seek to hold at the Palm Coast Community Center at the Waterfront room 116. Last year we held our first annual, and it was spearheaded by our team, and we funded it completely as we are not a nonprofit, and we are, I guess, advocates for the children of the community because they are our local business owners, and we were able to provide them a platform to showcase their products and services. And I believe that if we continue this tradition of annually having this business fair for the kids in our community, it'll inspire them to become local business owners in the future. So that's what I'm here for, and I hope that I do receive the sponsorship and the support of your council and of the mayor.
Very good. Please make sure that you share your information with our communications director, Ms. Kershaw, in the back. And also, did you mention the date?
Yes, it's June 29th, and it is from 11 to 3 p.m. And I did seek the support last year. I sent you guys an email, but I was able to have the response from Councilwoman Pontieri, and she was supportive of our efforts, and I hope to receive the support of yours as well, too, for this year.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. Jeffrey Saib,
As a participant in the Imagine 2050 Comprehensive Plan update meetings, I was sent an email from the city recently detailing proposed vision statements for the new plan. The email listed 5 vision statement choices and requested that I vote for one of them. All along in this process of developing a new comprehensive plan, the public, when given the opportunity, has weighed in overwhelmingly that we want green spaces, open spaces, and a concern for natural beauty, the environment, and wildlife. At the meetings and the postings by the public I gathered, we want to see, as I do, a Palm Coast in 2050, one of the rare for Florida, but certainly possible, naturally beautiful city. Yet out of the 5 vision statements that were sent to me, 3 of the 5 say nothing about the environment. Instead, they write like something you might find in a Chamber of Commerce brochure describing city attributes that cater to attracting a business clientele to Palm Coast. I did not get that from anything that I had seen or heard from the consulting firm or the public. I can only surmise that these have come from the stakeholders groups that seem to have an overbearing presence here that, in my opinion, is not justified. To go forward with this understanding of the many views of the future of Palm Coast, we need to recognize that these statements are not mutually exclusive of each other, and so both can be included in the final vision statement. The mayor and the council have the say in this, so any vision statement must be inclusive of what residents repeatedly stated they want in a comprehensive plan. Here's a different vision statement. In 2050, Palm Coast has become a beacon of diversity and attention to city characteristics that emphasize and promote the environment and natural beauty. The city has grown in a beautiful and livable manner, allowing residents and visitors to enjoy and take advantage of employment, housing, education, and entertainment opportunities, combined with the natural beauty all around us and the friendly attitudes of a city on the rise. Thank you.
I thank you for your comment. Celia?
I'm Celia Puglisi, resident since 1991. Good morning,
Celia, pull close so everybody can hear. Thanks.
I'm Celia Puglisi, resident since 1991, and I appreciate you letting me speak. First of all, I wanted to mention to our mayor and council, though I'm fully aware that the pool on Belterre is not the district of the city, but the disastrous school board, which 3 members versus 2 have voted to close it down to 1,078 residents, of which many of them have special needs, like Mr. Saib's daughter. There are many other residents with special needs that I know there, and I know you should weigh into that issue because though it's the school district, and I don't blame you, maybe you would have taken a different approach, you need to influence directly mayor and council into this issue and make to an arrangement, because this is an interlocal type of issue where everybody wants to see who is the biggest chief. The people is victimized meanwhile. And those people, I don't know yet, Mr. Mayor, how they didn't go to ADA, the American Disability Association, AARP, for all the elderly are using the pool, and also to the Central Florida free legal services for people with minimal incomes, that are all those people that use that pool. If they will go to these three organizations, this issue would have been ended with this school board. So we need to look into the 1,078 people that are denied now this use because they put a gate. One other issue is that now they started clearing for 300 and something homes by Royal Palms, which is part of the town center. I understand these homes to be built there. I hope you do not allow, and what Mr. Our chief from the fire department said to me, they're working on something that there is no any more burning within city limits. It's very important, sir, because all these surrounding communities around that area will get their lands compromise over greed. We just can't have that. So these are two things that I'm really asking you. And for the people, it's very important, the people, I don't use that pool, but my daughter have, these two pools the city has, they're crowded already. I live in Sussex County before I came here many years ago in the late 80s. The technical, vocational technical school had a huge covered pool, winter and summer, for everybody, and it was back then. So we need those two pools, please. Thank you so much.
I thank you for your comment. Please, either one. Mr. Carr?
Steve Carr, Palm Coast. At one of the city council meetings, I was corrected as to FDOT traffic count on Florida Park Drive. And the remark was that the city of Palm Coast has given that traffic count to the FDOT for them to post on their website. Well, that's sort of shocking to me because that means that the city has watched that traffic growth the whole time and did nothing to prevent it. And so traffic just keeps increasing. The traffic is being exchanged between Palm Coast Parkway and Palm Harbor Parkway, making actually a residential street a parkway. Wow. So last count was 7,700 cars per day, 765 trucks per day, which really, if you multiply it all out, it comes out to over 3 million cars or 3 million vehicles per year. Well, that's quite a lot of vehicles going through a residential street. So I've been trying to get something done about that. As scientific studies go, they keep showing that there's a rise in cancer from different areas. Scientific studies, close proximity traffic to homes is bad for the health of the residents. And all of us know that traffic fumes are carcinogenic. They cause cancer, can cause cancer. So these close proximity to traffic to homes, who is the target of those studies? It's not the residents that live there because they can't do anything about the traffic. It is the people that actually control the traffic. That's who those studies are geared for. That's the target. That's what we're asking, to somehow use those studies and reduce the amount of traffic that's on Florida Park Drive. It's not just the fumes and the dust and the noise, it's the constant speeding every day. So I will continue to ask for help for the residents of Florida Park Drive. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Jeremy Davis, P section. Can you hear Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. Well, here I am, still asking for you to make it make sense. I still live right next to the only hill on Parati Lane. There was never a hill before, but now there's a hill. This weekend, I was in my backyard trying to admire this new hill that the city has allowed to happen. And then you get rid of the city manager, that she wasn't the one responsible for the hill next door to me. So I asked you to keep digging to find out who's responsible, who signed off on that site plan. Somebody allowed that. Because if you haven't ridden down Parati Lane, you will absolutely know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as you ride down it, because I know some of you have. It's unacceptable. Every morning I have to wake up and see the incompetence of the city every day. And then Carl Cotier's architectural design for his swell, it's a masterpiece. I was admiring it this weekend. And I allowed the builder to come in and dig a trench into my backyard to sort of fix the problem. Now I have a trench in my backyard that I shouldn't really have to deal with. It didn't make sense when they did that, but I tried to be the best person I can and allow them to fix something. But you just can't take common sense. It's simple. I was looking out this morning at my backyard. I can see the grade goes to the left, but they dug the trench to the right. Make that make sense. It doesn't make sense, nor does the house next to me. Nothing makes sense. Everything y'all are doing doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is the greedy. All of y'all are greedy. That's what makes sense. Quit lining your pockets and actually start caring for the city. And I'm not talking to Teresa in this at all. She actually emails and responds to the people out here. But everyone else here, y'all are on your own little agenda. Y'all need to come together as a unit and make Palm Coast something worth living in. Every day I wake up, I regret moving here. And that's because of what you have done. You allowed this, you and your backroom dealings. Like I said before, this is all this city is nothing but backdoor dealings. You have people in the city that have been here for however many years that don't even deserve their paycheck. I could do a better job in their jobs, and I don't even know their jobs. But I know I could do a better job, just because I'm dedicated to making my life better until the day I die. Really, that's all we're here, is to make our life happy. But you're making it miserable.
Are there any additional speakers that would like to address me this morning? Seeing no one come forward, I will close public comment, and I'll ask the acting city manager, are there any follow-ups you care to do now or assign to staff?
Yes, Mayor, to Mr. Davis's point, we have not passed that final inspection at the back of his property where he's talking about that berm. I've been in contact with Ms. Stevens, so it's not final, it's not passed, so we are still working towards that solution.
City council members, any particular point?
I have none.
I would just make one comment to Mr. Carr's comment. I am the liaison to I'm the second vice chair of the Volusia Flagler TPO, and the city of Palm Coast does not offer the DOT their statistics that are published by the DOT. They share them, but the DOT does their own studies and calculates their own numbers. So you will see a variation between the two numbers, and if you'd like more information, I'll share that with you, at another time, just so you're correct on the data.
I do have one question, I'm sorry, for city manager. There was a comment made about the vision statements. When will the surveying portion come back to us with results for
At
that?
your May 14th workshop.
Perfect, thank you.
I have one comment to make, Mayor.
Yes.
To Mr. Jeremy Davis. I'm not quite sure where he's getting his information from, but I do want to say that he's got it all mixed up. If he feels that everybody up here is lining their pockets with money or wherever it's coming from, he's wrong, totally wrong. And the statement, it offends me, I don't like it, and he needs to make sure that he knows he's getting the correct information from wherever it's coming from. I don't appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your comment, so I think you speak for all of our
Yes.
city council members here. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate that. Okay, with that, if we could, we will close public comment, and we will move forward with our first presentation today, which is the annual investment report. And Helene, I guess you'll kick it off.
Yes, good morning, Mayor, City Council. Here with us today, we have Scott Sweden with PFM. They are the city's investment advisors, and he will be doing the annual presentation.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Scott Sweeten, Senior Managing Consultant with PFM Asset Management. For the most part, I'll try to keep this broad, brief overview regarding the economy, and then we'll touch on the two portfolios. The one thing that we do on an annual basis is review investment policies to see if we can update any of the language, but this would be the framework that we work from: Florida statutes, Association of Public Treasurers, and GFOA best practices. Obviously, our philosophy is aligned with public sector goals. Really, the takeaway here, we invest for safety, liquidity, and yield. basically within the boundaries of your investment policy. Now, current market themes, these have been pretty relevant for at least the last 24 months. The economy in general, pretty strong across the board, no matter what indicator we're looking at. Inflation is cooling off. It's had a nice steady downtrend. CPI, which we're going to get another reading tomorrow, that's been hovering 3.1, 3.2% for about the last 3 months. You will hear the Fed refer to that as sticky inflation, since we can't seem to break below that 3% level yet. Labor market continues to be very strong. The most recent reading we had, I think it was 330,000 jobs added. Unemployment rate ticked down slightly. Again, strong across the board. Consumer spending remains very strong as well. Now, this is basically where things changed in December. The Fed pivoted, if you will. You'll continue to hear that description as well. But they came out in November and December and alluded to the fact that they are going to cut rates 75 basis points this calendar year. Now, the earliest projection was going to be March of this year for the first cut. Now we're actually probably looking at mid to the latter part of this year. But again, everything is going to be data dependent as we move forward. The Fed came out with their most recent dot plot, which basically is indicating they fully anticipate to cut rates 75 basis points. I'll go over the Treasury yield curve just to touch on some of the volatility that we've witnessed. This is the most recent Fed dot plot. So each of those dots would represent a member of the Federal Reserve and where they anticipate rates to be as we move a little bit further out on the timeline. And you can see the trend where 2025, 2026, we do start to get down to that 2% target level that the Fed is trying to achieve. Really, the only part I will touch on here, these are Federal Reserve projections. In the bottom left, the PCE inflation, that's personal consumption expenditure. That's the main indicator that the Fed monitors for inflationary pressure. The most recent reading on that was 2.8%, so that is one of the first indicators that we do have that it has actually broken that 3% barrier. So that is something to keep an eye on as we move forward. The only other thing I'll touch on, unemployment rate. The Fed has been very transparent that they're comfortable allowing that to even slightly tick up to the low to mid 4% range as they continue to try to rein in the inflationary pressure. Inverted yield curve. We've been looking at this for almost 2 years now. This is actually, we're in a historic area as far as the period of time where this has been inverted. You will see from this particular slide that once the Fed does start to cut rates, that short end of the curve, 12 months or less, you're going to see that drop rather dramatically. It's going to move lock and step with the Fed cutting rates. To show you the difference between where yields were and where yields are currently, if we just take a look at the end of December 31st, you can see the 2-year. Okay, Siri, we don't need you right now. Taking a look at the 2-year, you can see 4.25, and currently that is actually at a 4.78, so considerably higher than where we were at the end of the year. If we take a look at the 10-year, you can see as of December 31st, we were at a 3.88. Currently, that's actually at a 4.43, so again, significantly higher from a yield perspective. Once the yield curve does normalize, and that, what I mean by that is it's going to be upward sloping, which is what we're usually accustomed to, we will start to move a little bit further out on the curve, so you'll see the duration incrementally move out a bit as the benchmark moves out as well. On a positive note, just in the fourth quarter, the 1 to 3 year index, which would be your benchmark, regardless of the sector in the fixed income space, treasuries, agencies, asset-backed securities, corporate A to AAA and BBB corporate, all positive, strong returns in the quarter. If we look at the last 12 months, obviously much stronger returns across the board for each of those sectors as well. So even with the volatility, we navigated the markets to the best of our ability, and you will see that once we get to the performance slide. Now, to take a look at the consolidated summary between the two portfolios, total assets as of December 31st, 88,107,480. If we look at the upper right quadrant, that gives you a breakdown of your sector allocation, so very well diversified across the board. The bottom portion, the bar chart, is basically just showing maturity distribution, and you can see that the portfolio is very liquid, 3 year and under category. So from a strategy standpoint, we're in great shape there. Here's a good recap of both portfolios. Again, the core portfolio, if you will, total assets as of December 31st, 64,224,197. We take a look at yield at market. That was actually indicative of where yields were at in the general marketplace at that time. Yield on cost was at a 3.6%. That was actually what the portfolio was yielding on that specific date. And portfolio duration at 1.73 years, I believe that's probably going to be slightly less than the benchmark, but we'll cover that on the next slide. Below that, the short-term fund, obviously very liquid. Total assets, $20,044,765. Yield at market, 5.44%. Yield on cost, 5.6%. So obviously, the short end of the curve is still very attractive right now. And portfolio duration, you're basically looking at maturities within 19 days or less. So very liquid. Now, just taking a look at the core portfolio, total assets, $65,339,800. Portfolio effective duration, 1.73 years, so slightly less than your benchmark effective duration at 1.75. And your benchmark is the ICE Bank of America Merrill Lynch 1 to 3 year U.S. Treasury Agency Index. Again, we've already kind of touched on yield at cost, 3.6%, yield at market, 4.39, average credit quality, AA, so very highly rated portfolio. Again, we've covered the sector allocation, we've covered duration, and in the bottom left quadrant, these are ratings purely from Standard & Poor. The slide that you're most interested in, I'm sure, is the performance slide. The one thing I'll point out, so just in the fourth quarter, the portfolio returned a positive 2.57%. The benchmark was at a positive 2.49, so we had a healthy outperformance there. The one thing I'll point out is slightly above that, underneath the bar chart. If we look at total dollar return just in the fourth quarter, you can see that we added a little bit over $1.6 million to the portfolio. Over the last year, 3 years, 5 years, and since inception, you can see that we've had a very healthy outperformance over the benchmark for all of those time frames. Now, until the Fed does start to cut rates, you're still going to benefit quite dramatically from where the short-term rates are right now. Taking a quick look at the short-term portfolio. Again, assets, 22,767,679. Again, a very liquid portfolio. Portfolio effective duration, 0.19 year. Yield at cost, again, 5.6%. Yield at market, 5.44. Portfolio credit quality, A-rated. You can see in the upper right quadrant, you're diversified between commercial paper and U.S. Treasuries. Your duration distribution, obviously that's just a visual showing the short-term aspect of the portfolio. And then credit ratings from Standard & Poor. The next two slides pertain to compliance purposes. Just a quick visual takeaway. The gray portion of the bar would indicate the maximum levels permitted by your investment policy. The blue shaded region is actually where you were allocated as of December 31st. So a quick takeaway, we have a very healthy buffer between where you're currently allocated and the limits of your investment policy. Then taking a look at max maturity analytics, again, the gray portion of the bar would indicate the maximum maturities for each of these categories. The blue shaded area would be the average maturity for the holdings within the portfolio. And again, just a quick visual takeaway, you're in great shape there as well. The next two slides, really just a great bird's eye view of the holdings of the portfolio. You can see on the left portion of the slide, security type. You can see the percentage that each of those comprise of the overall portfolio, and then ratings from S&P, Moody's, and Fitch. So again, just a great bird's eye view of the overall holdings for both portfolios. And then taking a look at portfolio earnings, you can see the nice upward trend. The yellow portion of the line would be yield at cost, and again, that's what the portfolio is actually yielding. And you can see that's been a steady climb up above 4%. We're probably, as of today, you're probably about 20 basis points higher on that area. And the dark blue, basically that's just cumulative interest earned. So the trend is your friend, and obviously that's something that we want to see upward sloping. The next slide basically is just things that you're probably already familiar with our firm, but after that, those would be the prepared remarks I have. I'll be happy to open it up for any questions.
I do have a general question first. The benchmarks and the metrics that you use, that everyone uses, are based on the national picture from the government and that. History has shown that Palm Coast is somewhat different because of its demographics, because of its wealth management, because of its residents, in how they hold their money and what they might be doing with their money. So the question I have is, we make a giant assumption when we jump from the national statistics to the 103,000+ residents of the city of Palm Coast. Do we take that into account, that we don't necessarily follow the national picture, or can you give me some comfort that that is the best strategy?
The national picture would come into play a bit, but also similar entities such as Palm Coast, that would also dictate what we're going to use as a benchmark. So a lot of similar cities, just in the state of Florida, you would see similar benchmarks as well, dependent on the purpose of that particular portfolio. If we're in that, let's say 1 to 3 year time frame, more than likely that's going to be a ICE, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch 1 to 3 year Treasury or Treasury agency benchmark, but they're all going to be pretty similar. So it's going to be more in line with the entities that we're comparing you to.
Okay, and then just finally, the every portfolio, usually everyone that I'm familiar with, has a profile, And how would you describe the profile of our portfolio? Meaning that, is it very conservative, slightly conservative? I know it's conservative, but in your world, in financial terms, what is our profile described as?
Well, for instance, if we just take a look with the core portfolio, so you have 64% of the portfolios in treasuries. So just from that particular breakdown, we're a little bit more on the conservative end. Again, the market is going to dictate where we find value.
Okay.
So the second largest allocation would be corporates at 19%. So depending on the spreads over, without getting too technical, depending on the spreads over treasuries, where we can pick up the most value, that's where we will put.
Because you
money
suggested
toward.
that it was a good thing that we had our allocations were very healthy because they were minimal. And we had a lot more bar to take on if we chose to.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is really, how conservative, when does being conservative begin to hurt financially or keep us from earning more than and I'll say it, the paltry 3%, we're not quite at 3% that we're currently earning. It's just a question, and with that, I'm sorry to take up everybody's time. Questions?
I have none.
I have a few.
I have
Go ahead.
So when we're looking, sorry about that. Thank you very much for the presentation. When we're looking at the diversification, we can see obviously the type of securities that we're diversified into. My question is, are we properly exposed to reap the benefits of something like the S&P being up, 25 to 30% over the last year? It seems like on the issuer diversification slide, I think that's 16 out of 20. We obviously we were allocated into these positions, but are there other portfolios that have general exposure to the S&P through things like index funds where we could have reaped, the 30% that SPY is up this past year?
Well, that would be a completely different discussion about a separate portfolio because this is strictly set up for safety, liquidity, and yield. So it is going to be 100% fixed income. So if we wanted to add, let's say, an equity sleeve, if we were, that would be a different discussion. Obviously, that's a different level of risk as well and the potential for return. But for your particular breakdown, to just answer your question further as well, the 2023 was extremely volatile, to say the least, especially in the fourth quarter and the latter part of the third quarter. So there was a flight to quality, and by that I mean money was flowing into treasuries. So you certainly benefited from the portfolio being set up the way it is. But the equity question, that would be a completely different discussion.
When does that discussion occur?
We can obviously sit with the staff and walk through that and come up with a few different examples, scenarios, and then obviously at that point, if things were to advance, we would present that to you.
Understood.
May I suggest that could be a factor in your strategic action plan priorities?
Yeah, and I think just in general, I know that a lot of our residents, we're very fortunate for the economy to be in the position that we're in, and a lot of times we often hear from residents how things aren't great, et cetera, et cetera. But if you were allocated into a SPY fund, you're up 30% in this past year, so I think that's part of something that we should be talking about.
Thank you for the information. I appreciate it. One of the slides references understanding your client's investment objectives. So what are the city's overall objectives when we look at our goals every year in this process? And that might be a question for you, Elena. I'm not sure who's best to answer that.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure.
Crystal
So
clear.
this kind of, I think, goes to the mayor's and to Councilman Clufus's high-level points. What are our real objectives here? Because this is my second year sitting through one of these presentations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what our end game is. I mean, do we plan on pulling out monies for anything at any time? Are these yields something that we can rely on at any time if we need, if there's emergencies, things like that? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, are we just in this perpetual state of investing and then having the presentation and investing and having?
Tool.
Right, yeah, I mean, what are we doing here? So this says that your approach, the number one approach for you all is to understand your client's investment objectives. So what are the objectives and what's the end goal?
Okay, so maybe I can help answer that question. So our first objective is exactly what the statute mandates, which is safety of principal. So that's making sure that we do not lose our money, right? Or the residents' money that we put into portfolio. Second is to make sure that we have liquidity. So if we need the funds, these are long-term investments, but we have to have liquidity if we need the funds, let's say for a project, right? We save, we have a pay-as-you-go approach, we save for the project, now we are going to go ahead and move forward with that project. So we want to have liquidity, that's number 2. Number 3 is yield. So making sure that our principal is safe, right? Making sure we have our liquidity, how much money can we make off of our portfolio? That becomes number 3. So what we do with the firm is we sit down with them and the city manager on a quarterly basis, and we review those allocations. And then on a monthly basis, we provide them basically all of our cash balances and all of our accounts, right? And the idea is, depending on how the market is doing, right now, short-term is more beneficial than long-term, right? So we keep more of our funding in our local government pools, right? Because they're earning above the 5%. So we analyze that. At what point does the system switch, right? At what point does that curve change? And then, what's our long-term goal? So for right now, the funds that are in your short-term investment, we already talked about with them at the last meeting that we had in February, that, before we go out for another short-term, like another 6 months when they mature, we're going to sit back down with them and make sure that it shouldn't be turned into the managed portfolio, right? That we shouldn't be looking at long-term, because if the feds are going to, reduce the rate, maybe this is the opportunity to go out a little bit further. Does that help?
It does, yes, thank you. And so what is our current liquidity? Is there an actual figure that's attached to that?
Well, for instance, your short-term portfolio, you're roughly looking at 19 days for an average maturity. First of all, it's extremely liquid, so we could easily free up funds there. Even in the core portfolio, the only thing that we would have to navigate there is the potential for maybe selling securities where you would incur a realized loss. But obviously, the portfolio managers would selectively look through the portfolio to figure out which would be the most advantageous to liquidate, but a very liquid portfolio.
Okay. And then my other kind of group of high-level questions is, I understand consumer spending is up, but a lot of that's on credit card. So are we anticipating, and will this affect the short-term investment portfolio, a credit card crash? And in addition to that, are we considering the Fed decrease in the election year? Because the fact that we're in election year makes the prospect of an actual decrease very volatile. So what are we doing to protect the city and make sure we're still remaining conservative and not necessarily relying on the Fed decrease, and then somewhat probably anticipating a credit card crash?
Well, basically, the way the portfolio is structured, so again, you have 20 million, which is basically extremely liquid, 19-day maturity. The way the portfolio is structured, regardless really of what the Fed does, because essentially right now, you're always going to hear that the market is efficient, that everything is priced in. So currently, 75 basis points in rate cuts is priced into the market currently. So we have been benefiting from that, certainly on the short end of the curve. That will continue until the Fed starts to cut rates. At that point, we will start to have a discussion where maybe we need to allocate a little bit further out on the curve, because once the yield curve normalizes, then again, we're going to have an upward sloping curve where value is going to be a little bit further out rather than our current environment, which is 12 months or less. So.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? So I thank you for the presentation, and just help me here, and I don't want to oversimplify. First, I greatly appreciate your work along with Helena in putting the portfolio together. What I think I'm hearing is thinking about safety, liquidity, and yield as the definition or the profile of our portfolio in that order. To me, this is somewhat like a very large saving account, which has and I'll say minimal return compared to other returns I've seen around, but secure, but does not really represent an alternative revenue or a tool, is what I said, to assist the city in any of its investment and/or operating expense and/or any other spending we might have to do. The portfolio is growing at a pre-planned, well-forecasted pace, but terribly constrained by those three profile elements. Am I way off base with that description?
I mean, ultimately, that is dictated by Florida statute.
statute.
So the safety, liquidity, yield, that is, when we take a look at your investment policy, most of that language is very relevant throughout the policy. So most of these portfolios are going to be conservative because for the most part, those are the three priorities.
It's that most word that I'm really asking about.
The which one?
The most word. You said most municipalities or most of those portfolios. I don't know the legalese of the statute, so that's why help me with this.
On a fixed income portfolio, it does just come down to safety, liquidity, yield.
Okay.
Obviously, if we take a look at a equity portfolio, you're going to have a much wider range with volatility. There are going to be certain years where the market has a negative return, which probably would not be happy with that either.
So that moves us into the idea that obviously staying in the investment for the long term is always the best policy.
Unless the only time that we would get out of an investment is if it made sense from a value standpoint.
Okay.
We can pick up yield, we can lock it in a little bit further out.
Okay, and I'm not trying to turn this into an economics or a financial class, but I appreciate the help, so I thank you for your presentation. And then Helena, and thank you. I do have a question for you. So based on at least my understanding today of the presentation, so this is a couple of years running now, we're all, as city council members, looking for additional revenue stream sources, things that will help us move the city forward in terms of, in these inflationary times, the expenses grow, and we need to find ways. The portfolio is certainly not generating healthy numbers to help us pay for all of that. So I move directly to other financial instruments. So what I'm going to ask the city manager to do is come back to us with an unrelated but a presentation on another tool, which would be in the area of our bonding capabilities and where we are, because we don't leverage borrowed funds. We tax and pay as you go our everyday residents that are here today. We don't take into account growth and those residents that aren't here or are coming tomorrow, that aren't sharing in the expense burden that we're putting on today's residents. So for that reason, and not directly related to your presentation, but it spurred the question, I would ask if we have consensus among City Council that we could engage in that conversation so we understand our bonding opportunities better.
I agree with that. I also would like to see a follow-up presentation as to how can we use this as somewhat of a tool? Because I find it very hard to believe that it's just this thing sitting here collecting dust that we see every year come through. And no offense to you at all, okay? I want to be very clear about that.
It's not collecting dust.
No, but we don't, but there's nothing tangible like that we can feel in the city that we're benefiting. We just see the figures, right? So it's almost like a figment. And so that's why I use that term. I understand that we're actively engaging and that you all are doing the work. I don't want it to seem like that, but we're not feeling tangible effects from a resident standpoint benefit. So if we could see a follow-up presentation as to any creative ideas, to your point, Mayor, as to what we can do with it, I think that that would be helpful, other than using it as a bonding source.
Okay, appreciate that. If there are...
On the investment side, would it help if I sent city council the backup to the transactions that they perform throughout the year? Because it's not a portfolio there's sales and purchases that happen throughout the year on investments, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
You mean the actual
so I think-
transaction activity?
Yes, if you would like a report for the year, for the transaction activity.
Well, if you're offering it, then yes, unless somebody doesn't want to review it, of course. I mean, the more we can understand and learn, the better. But yeah, sure, that'd be great.
And again, I just want to reiterate, it's not that I don't think you all aren't doing anything. I know you are. I'm just saying that from from a realistic standpoint, from an outside resident looking
Right.
in, seeing what it does for us.
And to reinforce your point, the one thing that we probably haven't said, so I know we don't like to use the word reserve, we say fund balance, but you have protected a very large amount of money very well for a long period of time. We haven't had to liquefy great sums of money, thank goodness, but there is that one piece that there's a security or protection for those funds, but that doesn't really make it a tool. That's kind of that's that savings account I was referring to. So I appreciate the input. So thank you very much for the presentation. And City Council members, if you have questions specifically, City Manager, to you, to Helena, how should they be addressed?
No, we'll follow up with the requested action, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
very
this
much for
morning.
your time.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, just a minute. Let them clear the podium first. Okay, we'll get there. So with our workshops, each of the presentation items today are open for public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment, please? Same rules apply.
My name is Celia Puglisi, in Palmco since 91. This is very good that we have a good liquid million sitting up there. I understand we have a long-term investment, which is very restricted to use, but we do have a short-term investment, and 22 millions, and I don't, how big is the long-term? I think 60-something millions. And the gentleman spoke that there was a return of 240 millions, right? Now, it is very nice to have that, but we do have, the city is telling us, it's like, if I would have all this money in the bank, but I will be going hungry, right? I mean, I know, and I ask, where is this money coming from? Do we have a line item reserve on which we are contributing every year? Where this money came originally from? Can I have that question replied? This is very important. Okay. Second, it's like I said, we're hungry, but we're not using any of that money. At least, for example, without telling you more, I learned that the pools of the Frida Samba is so expensive, the increase in the price for the inflation. I'm concerned about this Frida Samba pool. Are they going to close that one? Because of over $50,000 or $80,000, we're getting on board to allow the school board not to contributing with them, and they close the pool to 1,078 people. We spent $163,000, Mr. Cote, on studying 2 of our, speed calming islands in Florida Park Drive. Those were my taxes, $163,000. And then you came and voted no to the construction of the 2 islands, over $382,000. With $1,240,000 return in just 1 quarter or 1 year, the gentleman that spoke, you could have resolved, just using that return other than adding to the general pool, resolve a lot of the small issues that we come here and we are begging you for. Let's use at least the interest return in some of the projects that we need in this city that are vital, and they are not millions of dollars. So I'm begging you to do that. And one other thing, we have, I don't know how many millions we have in the long term. I pay attention to the short term, 22-something million. We need to do some things in this city with small amounts of money, because, we need it. And you will show to the people, hey, this problem is resolved. Look how nice. We use a little money from the pool, from the return. It's like, Mrs. Poncheri asked this type of question. So, hey, let's don't run hungry when we have millions in the bank. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Celia, I would ask you to spend a minute while we have the consultant and Helena here, just to go through the definitional differences between cash on one hand and the increased valuation of an investment.
Yes,
I
yeah.
think you want to try to understand, those are not dollars that are flowing into a bank account that can be spent. They're part of an investment portfolio. So maybe if you spend a minute, you could kind of help understand that, okay? Are there any other questions, comments from the public? Seeing no one come forward, I will close out the public comment. Any further discussion from City Council?
No, just important to distinguish interest versus returns from investments. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. All right, that will move to our number 2 presentation, which is permanent city manager search. So take it away.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Renina Fuller, Director of Human Resources. At the last council meeting, council asked staff to come back with some options for a permanent city manager. So we're here today to present some options as well as look for direction from council.
Hold on just a second. Here you go. Okay.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, Tim Wilsey, Human Resources Manager. We took your direction and we looked at the different options for obtaining a search firm for a permanent city manager, and we did come up with a couple of options. So here what you're looking at is a timeline, and the 2 options, which you'll see on the next page, are to go out for an RFP for a full bid process for a search firm, and this would go out obviously nationally, and then they can respond accordingly. And that typically would post for somewhere around the 45-day mark, and then there's a review period on the firms as you all review and make a selection, and then following that would be the process then of moving forward. Currently, there is a local municipality that is utilizing a national search firm, so we are able to piggyback on that contract, which would save 2 months off the process, roughly, the 45 days plus the 15-day review period, and that's why you see the little arch over to on the timeline. So moving forward, obviously everything is an estimate based on search criteria and how long you want to post it for and things like that. So the future timeline really depends on how you would like to shape and architect the search process and the timeline for that. Okay, so I think what we're looking for today is would we like to go out to a full bid for an RFP process from the city? Would we like to piggyback a local contract or another municipality, or review that one at least? So
if you could, just in very, very simple terms, the pluses and minuses of piggybacking versus not piggybacking.
Time.
How much time?
It's about 2 months less.
So 60 days less if we piggyback.
Correct.
Now, what's the downside of piggybacking?
You have one company to select from.
That's already
So we're not actually choosing we are choosing. We're not looking at a variety of search firms to choose from, but that would add 60 days to the process.
Correct.
Okay. So let's go down the line with City Council.
Piggybacking save us money.
The contract amount really determines what this council sets as a spending limit. Obviously, every municipality and what their needs are would be different as far as how much they would like to spend. You can obviously put a cap on any contract that would move forward. The amount of the contract is not what's in play. We can negotiate those terms, but piggybacking the terms and then the legalities of it is what we're looking at here. But as far as the amount, you can always put a cap on that.
So we're looking at time, basically.
Time, correct.
Saves us time. I have just some questions. From the last time we attempted this, we sort of did it a little bit differently. And I remember getting like about 98 applicants or so. I remember the book full of resumes, which was great, by the way, very helpful. And I want to make sure, regardless of the process, those resumes come to us as they come in.
Oh, absolutely.
And allow us to get them and then stack them in a book and obviously do whatever we feel we need to do.
Absolutely.
But last time, we didn't use a firm at all. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we just put this out ourselves?
We had some assistance from GovHR, their representative down in Volusia County, but that was minimal.
Okay. And we got about, like I say, 99 applicants, I think, and I know some were way out there, I mean, and others there were some pretty serious applicants in that.
That's correct.
So is that a process we may want to consider going through again? And I'm just offering up that suggestion to save us time and money. And again,
just so I understand your point, piggybacking saves us time, the other process does not. I mean, you mean eliminating a search firm?
Right, because we did get 99 applicants, and yeah, there were a few that were, obviously not qualified. I was able to quickly go through those, but there were some applicants that were highly qualified.
Can I make one comment just to help with this? And I'm really listening to everybody up here, so we're not there yet. But let me, a comment that I heard, because I had offered to speak to the League of Cities, and I did. So it is my understanding that search firms that specialize in the executive level of municipal government keep literally in daily touch with a network of who they consider to be the best possible candidates for the appropriate positions throughout the country. Some of those, and perhaps many of those, are, are confined to work with those search firms. So we would lose the ability, they would not be able to submit their applications to us because they have made an exclusive arrangement with a search firm.
Hired on with the firm.
Correct.
I get it. Well, and that's fine. I'm not opposed to a
Yeah.
search firm. But I want to make sure, last time we had a conversation about requirements, and we had discussed putting educational requirements on there, and we then ended up not doing that. And I don't want to do that, because there's a lot of folks out there that have done amazing things in this world without that education.
And that would be completely up to us to define the profile.
And I want to make sure that whoever we go with,
Absolutely.
we're able to set our own criteria. We're not forced to just live within their means.
Absolutely. You'll be able to design the brochure, and we can add
So,
any kind of educational
My feeling is,
component.
if it saves us time, I have no objection to the piggybacking, as long as we can put our own criteria into that search. I'm fine with it.
I will say that the search firm that has the piggyback contract is listed with the Florida League of Cities.
Right.
Great, terrific.
Yeah. Councilwoman Pontieri?
Thank you. So I guess my kind of threshold question is, last time we had this discussion, or, when the issue first came up, we talked about allowing the new city council to ultimately hire the city manager, because there are 3 people here currently up for election, 2 we know will not be here for a fact. So is that still the sentiment? Because I don't see the purpose in skipping 60 days or speeding the process up for 60 days if the sentiment is still that the new council should in fact pick the city manager, which I think is what makes sense, being that they will be the ones working with the city manager and working with the staff that city manager creates.
So if I may comment on that, I understand the logic to the point. However, if I expand that concept, then every city council term limits itself to what it does within that term. I think the city and city staff roll on, with the dynamic changes in city council. My personal feeling is that we are better served to spend the time to find that city manager with all of the experience that the dais currently holds, because the next dais will not hold as much experience with the current staff as the next council would. And I think we all, and I'll admit this right away, getting up to speed when you sit here takes some period of time. And I do know that there is a comfort level for staff in terms of having their organization in place. So I don't disagree, but I struggle with, for me, it's a little bit of a kick the can down the road, but I understand why. I understand the thought process. But remember, those city council members, yourselves, will be in play 2 years after that.
Yeah, so I guess, and I understand your point, Mayor, I don't fundamentally disagree. I have really two concerns. One is, I don't want to kick the can, I want it to happen organically. What I'm saying is, should we piggyback because that allows us to speed things up? I don't understand the point in quote-unquote speeding things up. But two, in the last few years, this has been a very volatile position. And I don't want to deter candidates, good candidates, from applying because A, they know it's been a volatile position, and B, a new council could come in and terminate them. If the new council doesn't like the city manager that was hired, they can come in and terminate them because this city council is hiring, the next city council could fire. So I, again, don't want that to be used as a deterrent for good candidates. So again, I don't necessarily think that we need to kick the can or anything like that, but I also don't see the need in speeding it up.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as far as the actual contract that we're looking to piggyback, I know we got a supplemental contract to our record, our agenda packet today. Is that what you all are looking to piggyback?
Yes.
Okay, with this specific, I'm always a fan of piggybacking contracts. Let me be very clear about that because I understand the benefits. But with this one specifically, it does have a description of services. Specifically, it says the consultant agrees to perform the services outlined in the advertised solicitation document, which is their RFP. So would we be creating our own RFP to substitute into this contract? Because by the reading of the contract, the answer to that is no.
Well, I thought we would be negotiating the contract, not necessarily writing an RFP.
See, I have an issue with that, because if, to your point, Vice Mayor, if we want to write our own RFP that does or does not have educational requirements, that does have certain scope, salary, things like that, then we, by definition, cannot enter into this contract, because this contract specifically, in the description of services, incorporates their RFP, not ours. So that is my fundamental issue with this piggyback. Now, I'm not opposed to having another piggyback come before us that says, hey, you know, we can substitute our own RFP in, but then again, this firm is accepting this contract based on what their RFP is saying they have to find for this city. So I think, you know, from the standpoint of being able to really write our own book here, we need to start fresh with the firm. And I think that going out for an RFP for a firm is the most diligent way to go about this, to make sure, I mean, 60 days in the scheme of things, if we want to look at a long-term hire for a city manager, 60 days is a drop in the bucket. It really is. I don't think it's worth sacrificing. We want somebody who's going to be here for a long time. We want a stable city manager who's going to sit in that chair, or I guess that chair, for you know, the foreseeable future. So I just think that the 60 days isn't worth it and that we should go out for bid.
I just have a question on piggybacking. Just because they have their contract, we could certainly negotiate parts of that contract, correct?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
if we said, let's negotiate, we're not comfortable with this, here's what we want to add to it, that's certainly acceptable, I would think, from a legal perspective. Also, I want to just say that I believe selecting the next city manager is the responsibility of this council, not a future council that may or may not be elected. Again, we have the most experience dealing with this now. And yeah, I guess a new council could be elected and they may not like our choice and they could terminate that city manager. Every city manager in this country knows it's a very volatile position and you run the risk of being terminated at any point in time. That's part of the job. That's part of what you're taking on.
Okay,
So,
let me, if I may, let me get everybody else's
Sure.
input so we don't.
May I just have a
Sure.
question? I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
direct question
Go
for
ahead.
Councilman Danko. When Denise was terminated by this council, Vice Mayor, you specifically stated that you thought the new council coming in should be the one that picks the permanent city manager. So I'm curious as to what the 180 is.
I don't remember stating that, and if I misstated that or you interpreted it wrong, let me just clarify. My position is I believe this council should select the next city manager. Now, if I said something, it was misinterpreted, or I misspoke.
It wasn't misinterpreted.
Or if I misspoke,
Okay.
I want you to know that my position is we should be picking this council. I know there's candidates out there that would love to have that opportunity, and I don't blame them. I guess if I was a candidate, I would probably be pushing the same agenda, but the honest truth is, we have the experience. It's happened on our watch, and I think that means we have the responsibility.
Let's get some input from the rest of city council members, please.
Okay, so I think that the statements that each and every one of you have made, all of them have information in it at a level that I certainly do agree with it from each one of you. However, I agree more so with hiring a city manager with this council in place because, like the mayor mentioned, that this council has a lot more experience. And I have to say that one of the things that I was going to mention today, with the election coming up and new council members coming in, I was actually going to ask that we add to the agenda for one of the next meetings, that there be some type of a manual put together for new council members that are coming on board, because I can tell you, we will lose time with new council members. I was one of them. I've only been here a little bit over a year, and it takes 6 months to a year, really, to learn what's going on while you sit up here on this dais. So we can lose time that way. We may or may not, but I can tell you for myself, it took me time to learn where I was, what I was doing, who I was dealing with, what my place was as I sat here on this council. So with the experienced members that are here now, and I think each of us now at this point, even myself and you, I'm Councilwoman Pontieri, we've both learned a lot being here within the last 2 years. So I believe that us hiring a city manager now is going to be a lot more beneficial than waiting, because we know more about what it takes to be a city manager and understand their position. So that's my feeling about it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hyder. Councilman Clufus, some comments?
Absolutely. My line of thinking is more akin to Councilwoman Hyder's. I think we have the experience and the brains up here to be able to choose a city manager that we expect to be able to fulfill the city vision. My one qualm, I have a few issues with piggybacking, though, on the other side. Number one, competing efforts. Essentially, would these city managers be, they're either going to A or B, and do they get diverted through essentially what their agency is? And then number two, I think, and I would love to keep staff out of the hiring process, because I know, honest to goodness, it's just additional work that you guys don't need. You have a million things going already, and it's not just, hey, free up somebody to do this thing. There's not people to free up. But with saying that, I would like to see some type of parallel search that just ensures that there are candidates out there that aren't being excluded just because they're not represented by Bob Murray and Associates. And I think that is one thing that the public could understand as well. And I've had a few people tell me this, that these are basically like sports agencies and other agencies that represent people. Basically, if you're not on their roster, it's hard to be represented by them, which makes sense in the big scheme of things. They're in business because they're in business. I think, now I'm saying that I don't want it to be a full, exhaustive search for city managers. I don't even think that they need to bring us the book of, the 99 applicants. It may not even have to be posted on our city website, but I think just some secondary level of oversight into the process to just make sure that we're not missing any candidates that are being presented to other cities. I think even as much as just looking at other municipalities and counties that are trying to place a city manager, and just look at their applicants and see whether or not it raises a question of, hey, why didn't this person come up on the search results from Bob Murray and Associates? So those are my standpoints. I think that we can effectively place a city manager in this role knowing what we know, but also just to be aware of those potential pitfalls that we could fall into.
Thank you, Councilman Clufus. One comment, and then Council, I have a question for you. I just want to change the narrative a little bit. I think everyone up here, if I'm wrong, tell me, what we're looking for is the best possible city manager that we can possibly find. There's just no question there. We're looking for a city manager that can look forward into the future at all of the things and complications and initiatives that are in play today. So there's no question that we're looking for the best and the brightest in the field of city manager. I think everybody understands that now. Councilor, with regard to the current acting city manager's contract, if I remember correctly, is there a stipulation on residence, and are we under a timeline? If you need to research that, you can, but I believe that there is a finite period of time from which we can operate without making some change to the charter, if I'm not mistaken.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I understand your question, you're asking your time limits on hiring a new?
No.
Okay.
No, the city manager or the role of acting city manager at some point in time, and I don't remember the exact timeline, has to be a resident of the city of Palm Coast. Is that correct?
According to your city charter, yes, that is correct.
And how long is that?
I would need to look, but it's my understanding that they need to be.
Let me help you, 6 months.
90 days.
90 days.
90 days.
Okay, no,
I think it's 6 months.
I thought it was 6 months.
I would say it is 6 months.
Okay, so we'll get the right number. I'm just throwing that in because we're going to have to deal with that. Otherwise, we'll be violating the charter.
Saying anyone we hire within
No,
6
I'm saying
months.
our current situation would require our acting city manager to be changed according to the charter after that timeline
Mr. Mayor.
runs out.
I think it would be better, let me review the contract.
Okay.
With the actor to give you a more appropriate
Okay,
answer on that.
appreciate that. I understand my point or not? Am I not clear?
Who's not a resident?
I don't.
Oh, I did not know that. Why not? Just kidding.
She lives in
So,
Fire Ridge.
again, and because it's a charter thing, I just have to make you aware of that,
That
okay?
puts a time.
Well, I didn't
order.
want to introduce that up front. I don't think that should be the basis for our decision-making or discussion, but you do need to be aware of it.
So you're not a resident of this city, and for you to continue on within
Past,
6 months. you
past
have
the
to be-
timeline that council will confirm to us.
Mayor, can I read it for you? Because I have the
Well,
charter.
I'd
pulled up.
rather have council come back to us, because there may be other ramifications. The charter's online, everybody can see that, so I don't want you to be interpreting it. I would rather council interpret it just to make sure that
Okay.
it doesn't relate to some other clause or some other thing. I would rather, okay, that's what we have them.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor, because I remember looking at this, I believe for the city manager, yes, the permanent city manager. I don't think there's any timeline on the acting city manager.
So that's why I need, I'm bringing it up, I don't know the answer, and I'm not the attorney, so if council could come.
I agree.
So that, Councilwoman Pontieri is correct. So there is no time limit on an active city manager. However, I don't have Ms. Johnson's contract in front of me. I want to make sure there's no other terms of that contract. But,
Right.
to the city charter just requires that the city manager have to be for 6 months to move here, but it does not reference an active city manager.
Okay, all right. All right, so then that, unless you tell us different, then that's not a,
So, but
that's not an incentive for us to move any faster.
No, I would
Okay,
just say pending
let's
review of the
make it simple.
contract. Yeah.
Understood. And HR, you good with that? You understand better than I do, I'm sure, I hope. Okay, good.
I did have one other thing, I think Mr. Kloufus brought it up. If we piggybacked onto one of this firm, we are just confined to their list of clients, or can we expand outside of it? Or is that something we negotiate?
Well, we will advertise everywhere.
We
So
will.
on our website and any other place that council wishes. So it would be up to the individual to apply for the job.
Would they have to apply through that firm if we did that
Through the-
piggyback?
If we piggyback, it would go through that firm, yes.
And does that firm charge its clients to become on their list, basically? Is there a?
That I'm not sure.
I'd be
I don't wanna
curious to know how
misspeak.
the firm works. Does it makes money somehow, obviously, and does it require clients to sign up and pay a fee, or do they take a percentage if you get the job? I'm not quite sure.
I don't think they require their participants to sign up and pay anything.
So Vice Mayor.
So we could advertise out
Yeah,
on our own.
So,
That's good.
And Vice Mayor, your comments, and hear me positively. Your questions are very good, but I think and I will accept this, that city council members here are not regularly engaged in a search with a search firm, at least, I've done it for many years. I don't know if anybody else has. So those kind of questions, it's not something that we do day in and day out, which is,
Well, I've never used a search firm in my career,
okay.
so I have no
So
idea how
I
it
have
works.
for many years, but I think to Councilwoman Pontieri's point, I don't think that there should be, I'm going to ask that the decision not be made based on 60 days, because I think 60 days is unimportant, irrelevant. Now, moving forward with a well-qualified search firm at this time, because we do have an opportunity with a piggyback contract, is a plus,
Agree.
or waiting. So I've got to ask each one of you, because we have to give staff direction today. So, wait. Would anybody else like to comment before we kind of go down the line? And I think you might.
One more time. So another thing that I wanted to ask about the direction that we're given today. In today's direction, is it just whether or not we're going to piggyback or go to RFP?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So do we have to come up with the terms of that RFP right now, or will that come back?
That would come back.
Okay, so that's a good question, because I know there's been a lot of public comment on the city manager's salary. I will note that if you want, there's a public record addition to our packet that shows that our salary is very modest for a city manager. So compared to other municipalities with even lower populations than ours. So I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to really go through that RFP, because in my opinion, that's where we're really framing who we're looking for here, is in the RFP that we get to craft, which is why I'm so heavily against piggybacking this contract, because it's already based on an RFP we didn't craft. So I'm in favor of, like I said, clearly I'm outvoted here on waiting for the new council. If you all want to pick the city manager, okay, but I would still say let's not piggyback off this contract. Let's really allow ourselves to get the best option possible by submitting an RFP for an outside firm.
I just want to ask
Wait.
a quick question on that, because I thought we received a different answer, that we would be able to piggyback, but negotiate parts of that bid to tailor to our needs, including your concerns.
Well, the contract is not the same thing as a RFP. This firm accepted this contract based on the scope of that RFP, and we can't negotiate that RFP. We can only negotiate the terms of that contract.
Right, so we could change the terms of that contract, and we could say, here's our salary range from X number of dollars to X number of dollars, because we would pick a range, right?
No, Vice Mayor.
And that's why I'm asking for clarity.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. So the salary that you're seeing is what they're being paid. It's not what the city manager is being paid. What we're looking for in the city manager is in the RFP that they had already incorporated and accepted this contract based off of.
Right.
So their scope was based off an RFP. They can't accept a contract from us based on a different RFP because it's a different scope. So that RFP is already incorporated. The terms of their contract with us, yes, like we could pay them less.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm.
Yeah, so that's the
So,
issue I'm having.
and let me just get to the end of this. So there is an RFP, which we did not write, which may have some things that we challenge. Through the screening process that they would screen first, but ultimately we are the deciders of the screening process. We can impose our own qualifications for the RFP with those candidates, applicants that are brought forward. That we could do.
I just think that it's more prudent to create our own RFP and then have other firms that
So,
compete against one another.
So what specifically in that RFP do we object to?
Well, the problem is, Mayor, the RFP in the packet that was supplemented is for a different city than the contract that we have in front of us.
Right.
It's not the same RFP. So I don't know what's in this RFP. It wasn't included in the packet.
I think it was
For-
sent as a supplement, wasn't it?
Yeah, I saw it.
I didn't see, to me,
okay.
there's a Lady Lake and then there's a different RFP.
Yeah.
Are they one and the same? Because they're two different cities.
There are two different, it's not Lady Lake. It's the one that was sent supplement, I believe.
So, council, if I'm hearing you correctly, you want us to bring back that piggyback or supplemental RFP that
Correct.
for the town of New Smyrna Beach?
Correct.
So that you can clearly understand what their scope was, what they were looking for in a candidate, if there was anything in there, and we can bring that back to you.
Because that's not existent in the packet right now.
And there seems to be consensus, but let me make a statement, okay? I'm going to give you my opinion. In order for this process to be as totally transparent and available to the public as possible, I'm going to agree with you that we should spend another conversation as soon as possible to go through the RFP to find out if it can suit our purpose or we have to go the other route. Again, and I said it earlier, I'm not going to get hung up on the 60 days. That's just, that's, wasting pennies that'll cost you dollars. It's not important. But I do think having all city council members confident that the RFP contains what everyone wants or does not contain things that we don't want would be appropriate, and also let the public know what our search is all about. So with that, if I can get consensus, and stop me if I'm wrong, I would ask staff at the next earliest opportunity to come forward with the presentation specifically regarding the RFPs that are currently related to the piggyback contracts. And then it will be up to us in advance to perhaps make our notes so we're ready and we're fluent to say, hey, these RFPs are not appropriate, if each of us could do
Can we
that.
add to that the commitment that this council will accomplish this goal?
That's a different issue. I think when it comes back, you can bring that point up. All we're looking at is whoever does the RFP, we're just trying to decide if this is even a possibility.
And how quickly can we get that back?
Probably next week.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we also add to that too, though? I'd like confirmation
Not too many
from-
addendums, come on.
No.
I'm trying to keep this transparent.
I get that, but I also want confirmation
Yeah.
from this firm that we can negotiate this contract, because
Sure.
usually piggyback contracts are not negotiable.
Please give us a preface before when you
we will
come
clarify that
about
as
these
well.
questions. They're very important.
Yeah.
And again, the only thing I'm troubled by, so I've done some homework on this firm, and it's great and all these things, but it's one firm.
Right, we want to be competitive.
Well,
That's my issue.
I don't ever like to have one choice. And that's the only reason I'm willing to move this forward, or I'm suggesting, at least from my point of view. So if you all are in agreement with me, does that give you enough direction to move forward to the next meeting?
We will come back next week with a draft RFP for you to
Great.
review.
And city manager, acting city manager, I'm corrected. Does that fill out an overly burdened agenda?
Your April 16th agenda is quite
It
lengthy.
is. So you're all okay with that, right?
Isn't that a business meeting? Can't we push to the next workshop?
Well, that's too, I just want to,
But, I mean, I'd rather do that than sit
you would
here
rather go
doing
to the next workshop?
No, I'd rather do it at the next business.
It's a very long agenda.
Fine,
Well, then we can spill over to the workshop if we need to.
if we needed to, but the sooner we move on this, I don't want to see us spending 6 months.
We don't have to,
deciding
we
what-
we don't have to do it at a business meeting because it doesn't require a vote. It's just staff direction. Well, what's your, okay, consensus.
I can go either way. It doesn't,
No, either way doesn't help. Pick.
meeting on the 16th is going to be overly burdened, then I can understand why we're going to want to.
If
push
it's
it
that
forward.
important, Vice Mayor, if it's that important, my opinion was that 60 days is irrelevant. If it's that important, let's give it its due time. Let's don't squeeze it into an agenda unnecessarily. I don't think it negatively affects the residents of the city of Palm Coast if we wait till a meeting where we have full attention. And you may want to give that RFP a really close look.
That's fine.
So that we come prepared so we can really move forward.
And again, I was good with the way we did it last time.
Okay.
I mean, just
No, understood.
to know, we got those
So
99 applicants.
can I get you to be okay with going to that workshop?
Okay with going to the workshop as long as we agree we will accomplish it before the next council.
Very good.
That-
Okay.
That's where I'm at on this.
Well, we'll have to make that decision. I mean, we can't decide that. We'll all have to agree. But if we do all the homework, then every good chance. Are you okay with, do you concede with this?
Yeah, I'm fine, as long as we're not making a decision that we are in fact going with this contract. We're
Right.
going to look at their
No,
RFP.
That's
totally
right. That's what you had asked. Councilwoman
I'm fine with
Hyder.
that. I'm fine.
Councilman Clufus. And I concur that we will move not to the next business meeting, but this will come back to you, answering the questions that were asked and presenting those RFPs, which we will receive in advance in our packages at the next workshop meeting. Fair enough?
There's two of them, correct, that we've been looking at?
Correct.
The two different firms.
No, it's two different.
cities.
Two RFPs.
The same firm.
That's correct. All
Okay.
right, just so we're clear.
Right, just be clear.
Acting City Manager, are you clear?
Yes, it'll
Very
be
good.
brought to you on May 14th.
Very good. All right, I thank you both.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just as a reattack, I reviewed Ms. Johnson's contract. There is no location requirement.
Very good. So we're not hamstrung with that. Perfect. Thank you. Very good. Then we move to presentation number 3, which is, oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. As we have agreed that after each workshop item, I will open up the floor for public comment. So please come forward.
Thank you for letting me speak. Too bad Mrs. Ponchieri is gone. I would like her to hear this. Okay, as a resident, first of all, I think that the city needs to write this contract for the new manager, whoever that is searching for it. Second.
Pull that mic a little closer, just so the people online can
Okay.
hear. Thanks.
Yeah, so the city needs to write the contract. Second, I believe that 2 our councilmen are not going to be here next year. And we have an excellent Councilwoman Ponchieri. For sure, they're not going to be here next year. And we have an excellent Councilwoman Ponchieri, and I think it will be of the interest that will be for next year. But anyway, if it's not happening, it's not on your mind, we need to have a city manager that we haven't had lately, okay? That needs to have a master's on public administration, the least for this kind of pay. And not only just out of the university, with some experience on that. Because we are the largest city between Volusia and Flagler County. We are growing fast and we need experience. We need a manager not only with a master's on public administration, we need a master with good credentials and good studies on, first, economic development, if he needed a master's. Second, we need an experienced land development also knowledge, credentials on this person, because it's some of the headaches we are having now. And also, it's third and lastly, these communications that we need in the city with the advance of technology on a way that will not damage the residents, that will be done accordingly what the residents need without damaging us. And so we don't need to go to attorneys and fight 150 feet, 200 feet from our homes, 5G tower, stuff like that. Person that has the knowledge. And a person that has the knowledge to receive the plans that we have, you ask for it. You represent the residents. We tell you what we need, right? And others tell you what they need. You pass the message to the manager, and the manager not under, tells our different departmental bosses what the council wants, what the residents want, because this is not happening lately. It's going all the way around, and this is not good. So we need a manager with a master's in public administration. Please, let's do that. I don't know what the RFPM, whatever they're presenting is, but we need that, sir.
So let me just help you with that if you're finished. So what we will be doing is working on the RFP, that's the request for proposal. I promise you the city will ultimately negotiate the contract with the applicant who does eventually become the city manager. We will do that.
Okay,
the RFP is different than the contract for service with the city manager. Okay, thank you.
Now, one other thing, I still have 13. One other thing, I don't agree with that, with your statement, Ms. Ponchieri, that the pay of $189 is within. No, it's not within, because the city of Deltona is $169,000, and they have as many in population like we have.
Thank you,
and
Celia.
other cities around are lower.
Okay.
So
Next speaker, please.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mike Norris, 2 Lima Place. Let's talk about transparency. Me, just a schmuck running for mayor, I knew about you. You were going to fire the city manager a month ago. Ms. Pontieri knew more than a month ago. So there goes your transparency. You got one council member up here trying to eliminate education requirements that should be on this job description. Ms. Pontieri pointed out before, you violated your own policies and procedures when you didn't put it on the agenda even to discuss firing the city manager. You just straight up pushed those aside and went ahead and fired your city manager. So you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have done it. You should have left Ms. Bevan in place. We know how you did it. You fired her without cause so she could retain her benefits. If there was an emergency and she wasn't doing a proper job, you would have fired her with cause and eliminated those benefits. So the city of Palm Coast should be ashamed of what's going on here. And I hope you members will try to put it in your mind and consider you shouldn't be picking the next city manager at all, because you did a poor job in hiring Ms. Bevan to begin with. So there's a real issue here, and most of you guys are going to be gone, and this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing it in this city, and we need better leadership.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public? Yes, sir.
Jeffrey Seib. I say I must agree with Councilperson Pontieri on holding off on any selection of a new city manager until after the next election. The reason I say that is because there is a group that will not be here for sure, and each of us has our own criteria for what we want to see in a city manager. And at will, where we can choose immediately, the day after we are sworn in, to make a motion to fire that city manager. I think it's really a little putting the cart before the horse as far as selecting the city manager at this time, because the new folks that are coming in here, however many they are, they will have a different criteria for what they want in a city manager than what the folks that are here. It's just the way they are. They're looking at something a little differently. And there's no break-in period. The break-in period is the day after you show up and sit down and look at the agenda and you're taking a vote on some big project, something. So you have to hit the ground running and take a vote immediately as soon as you get in that office. And so I think it's more prudent of us to take a long stretch for the search and wait till the next group comes in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members that wish to speak to me on this topic? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Any final comments?
Yes, just that I most certainly hope that the way that the public views this position is not different than how you would have represented yourself on the position of whether or not Supreme Court justices should have been appointed during presidential terms. So don't flip-flop back and forth one way or the other. If you have a stance, I hope that it remains consistent across both of those things.
Anyone else?
No, I think that's good.
Just two brief comments. So as regarding the salary, City Clerk, can we make sure that this salary is included in today's record? Because I do think it's a good education piece. It opened my eyes. I specifically asked for it because I had no idea. So I would appreciate it becoming part of the public record. Two, Mr. Norris, as to your comment, I would ask, and this somewhat goes to Ms. Hyder's comment earlier, do not assume what people knew and didn't know. I voted no on firing the city manager, clearly. I did not know that Tuesday was going to be accompanied by a motion to fire Ms. Bevan. So I would ask that not be a statement that is made as if it is general knowledge.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, with that, we will move to presentation number 4, which is amending a resolution by increasing the land development site permitting. No, I'm sorry. I missed it. Number 3, presentation regarding the Saltwater Canal update. Good morning.
City Council, if you recall from your August 8th, I believe it was a workshop, Carmelo and Taylor Engineering provided a presentation on the saltwater canals. It included a bathymetric survey, sediment samples. There was no clear direction on next steps, and it was not included in this fiscal year's budget. I've asked Carmelo to come forward today to review those next few phases as you get ready for your strategic action plan workshop on April 23rd. And then we would need consensus for any part of this to move forward in the budget. And the last slide was the survey was mentioned, and so the survey questions are attached for your review as well.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
So as Ms. Johnson mentioned, this is a follow-up to our last presentation here. Council had some questions and they wanted to see some additional data, scheduling what the next process would be, estimated costs. So this is what we're trying to provide here. This is just a quick glance at what Phase 1 analysis and study provided. This is essentially just a brief description of what you already saw during the last one. What took place, review of the permits, that all the data collection, seawalls, bathymetric survey, preliminary settlement, sampling analysis, et cetera, and identifying potential and evaluate potential funding sources. So on what the next steps would be, right? So now that we have done a preliminary analysis and we have looked at what the design or lack of permitting was back in the day, right? So if we wanted to move forward with this process, this is what would be to go to get a permit, right? So we need a permit before we can go actually do the dredging and construction. So Taylor Engineering, which is the consultant that did the initial phase, they came up with a scope, and we went back and forth a little bit. We've narrowed it down to this, where we would have a pre-application meeting with all the agencies that are pertinent to this. We would have a further canal evaluation. This is all part of the pre-application, right? With these meetings with the agencies, it would provide the basis of what the permit and design would actually look like. Here is just a brief synopsis of what the schedule could be, from notice to proceed, the time duration, so 3 months for pre-application meeting, canal evaluation 6 months, and then presentation off those meetings, right? What we've gathered in, it would be about 4 months after that. Task 5 is preliminary design. It's really tied, and it could be just called design, right? They're starting the actual design portion of it. They identify priority areas, provide cross sections, and get more accurate dredging volumes. Right now, where we have our estimates, it's hard to. A bathymetric survey is good for analysis and do conceptuals, but to get to the nitty-gritty and get really accurate volumes, you need to do a lot of computer-aided design work. There's a lot of analysis that goes through it, so this is getting more knee-deep into it. 5.2 is the next task, which is the dredge material management area, right? Where are we going to spoil site? Task 6 is the environmental permitting. It's fairly straightforward. The sampling analysis plan for DEP, right? They drive that boat. They say how many you need, at which location, what are you going to test for. 6.2 is tied with that environmental permitting. It's the environmental resource application, the ERP. All the agencies you have listed here, you see Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries Services, City of Palm Coast. This next task is just, we always anticipate when we submit for design and permits, there's going to be an RFI period, right? The agencies will ask for questions, clarifications, corrections to the plans. This is what they're trying to include in this. Task 6.4 is the evaluation and applying for potential funding, so talking grants, that sort of stuff. Task 6.5 is to develop a long-term dredging management plan, right? So it's not just...
Excuse me for one moment. Let's go back to 6.4.
Sure.
Funding sources are limited. Have we looked towards the feds? Have we looked towards the state? Have we explored all those funding opportunities? They're there?
Our consultant has looked, as part of Phase 1, they've looked at a number of different grant and or other funding opportunities. A lot of these grants are actually more tied to, communities that are disadvantaged, or improvements to water quality, or, coastal rehabilitation, right? So in a nutshell, it's, our city is a little, our saltwater canal within the city is a little bit too good to qualify for some of these. I get that's a little ironic because we're identifying it as potentially needing dredging, but there are some opportunities out there, but it's challenging. It's not a ton of them because of those criteria that I just mentioned.
Right, but there are funding opportunities out there. I know when I lived in North Carolina, we had to search for sources to fund Oregon Inlet, which was a big fishing inlet. And the Fed stepped up and provided an awful lot of assistance that the state actually bought its own dredging equipment for that inlet. So I know there's funding out there. It's just we have to explore, I think, every possibility of getting federal funds to do this. And if there's state funds, that would be great too. But I don't want to see us just kind of throw up our hands and say, well, we're probably not qualified. I want us to move forward on searching this funding out, definitely. And I know that's hard. I know that's not an easy task. But this could become quite expensive. And obviously, other people's money is better than our own money for doing something like this.
I agree. That's why it's one of the tasks in here is to continue evaluating and going after funding opportunities, yes. You okay?
And there will be a find event coming up this month. I think it's on the 18th of April. So I hope we're all there lobbying our friend Randy, who has offered to try to find ways to assist us on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, I missed where I left off.
6.5.
6.5. So development of long-term dredging maintenance management plan, right? It's not just dredge now, forget it. We need a plan, right? How do we reduce sedimentation and frequency? What can we implement, right, to do some of that so we don't have 20 years, 25 years down the line, this again at a higher cost because inflation, right?
I hope you're looking at those communities in our state that have their own dredging equipment for canals too, rather than just funding, periodic dredging or whatever. I mean, at least we should be looking at the opportunity to possibly put our own equipment in if it makes economic sense. I want to make sure we stay focused on that.
So I think those bullets identify that.
Yeah.
What the bullets indicate is that a plan, which could include some of those components, would be well considered, yeah.
Yeah, if it's economically feasible. It may not work
no,
for us.
of course, of course.
Yeah, thank you. So task number 7, it includes the final design, technical specifications, right, the creation of bid documents. So 60, 90%, 100% submittals to all those agencies I listed before, FDEP, Army Corps of Engineers, City, Fish and Wildlife. They would also assist with preparing the schedule of values, right? So that is critical to the bid documents, right? And how much anticipated dredging amounts, what other construction is going to be needed, et cetera. And just task number 8, it's just a little more formalized what bidding and construction services are going to be. The request for information, the reviews, the construction phase services, attending pre-construction meetings, et cetera. So this is all services that the consultant is proposing to move forward and assist us with this project. This next slide, you'll see really the crux of it, right? What are the design and estimated construction costs? I broke it down by, color-coded and phases, what's design, permitting, what is construction, and then we further broke it down from the consultant depending on the excavation amount, right? So whether we go 6 foot deep in some of the canals versus going to 8 foot deep on some of these canals. And you can clearly see the vast difference. First of all, it's a range because although they have bathymetric data, they haven't really fully analyzed it, so they're providing a range, but you can see the drastic difference between 6 foot to 8 foot. It goes from 13 miles to 24 miles of dredging, right? So it's significant. So that's just something for you guys to consider and discuss. And this last slide here is just, so these are going to be some of the typical questions for you to review and make any recommendations for the survey to send out to residents.
So this slide is, do you want to go ahead?
No, this is a series of questions that staff came up with to ask the residents. It would be a public survey that we would send out if there's any.
City Council had asked that surveys be presented in advance of their distribution out to the community. So if you have any challenge with any of the questions, this would be a good time to note that.
Well, I guess I'm not quite sure about, starting with the first question, do you live on a saltwater canal or not? I'm not quite sure what that has to do with our responsibilities to maintain those canals. I mean, this is not a class warfare item in my view. I'm not quite sure what this accomplishes, to be honest with you.
If I may.
It's like, do you live on a golf course? Most people don't. To me, it's kind of like, we still have a responsibility
Okay.
towards our golf
So
course.
that's why we're doing
We have
this. Make your comment.
responsibility,
Yep.
You know, do you live on this road? No, I don't live on that road, but we still have a responsibility to that road, if you
Okay.
see what I mean?
Yep.
I understand what you mean, Councilman Danko. The reason I'm particularly interested in this is not because of this one question in a silo, but rather how they answer the rest of the questions.
Yeah.
Because to your point, a very good analogy, I don't live on a golf course either, but I care about the health of our golf courses because it helps our overall
Right,
community.
right.
So I would be interested when we look at these results, what a person answering yes says to the rest of the questions versus what a person answering no says to the rest of the questions.
Yeah, I just, again, I still see it as our responsibility, though, to do that maintenance if needed. And it's been neglected in the past, and I'm not blaming anyone here, we weren't here neglecting it, but I don't want this to turn into, I remember we had a previous council member who's no longer here with us, who was sort of trying to insist that anybody who owns a boat should be paying for the dredging and no one else should have any responsibility, and that's obviously, you know, not how a city works.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't want to create a class warfare situation,
Okay.
is what I'm saying.
Remember, this survey goes out to individuals who would answer. I think, Councilwoman Pontieri, your point is well taken. If you sorted the two batches and then looked at the results, would be interesting. Is it incredibly important? Who knows? You'll know after the
Okay,
fact. No, the point is well said. I'm glad we're flushing it out. Councilwoman Hyder,
I have no
comments?
comments.
And Councilman Clufus?
I think it might be significant as far as, I shouldn't say it's significant. It could potentially add additional layers of critique that we could have by having this additional information if they do live on a saltwater canal versus not living on a saltwater canal. I think that it might actually prove Vice Mayor's point where it doesn't matter one way or the other, and that equal discrepancy across both for the distribution of the results. I don't see anything wrong with keeping the question on there, but I do understand the position of like, why is it on there? But I think it may offer a little bit more insight on the results, but I don't mind keeping it on there, but I do understand the position that Councilman Danko has.
I do have a comment.
Please.
Sorry, I'm late.
No, absolutely.
I also agree with Council Vice Mayor Danko. The canals really are the responsibility of the city, and I think that we should all be concerned that they're maintained and kept properly.
Okay.
And that's it.
I have a couple questions. Just want to get my colleagues' thoughts on additional questions. I don't have any issues with the ones that are posed, but I agree with you. I don't want to create this divide of those who live on a canal versus those who don't live on a canal. But I do think it is a real serious question that we need to ask. I'm looking at this price tag on the slide before, 10 million to 58 million for dredging. We need to really start considering whether or not a special assessment for people living on the canals is what needs to occur. I'm not saying whether I'm in favor of it or not in favor of it. I need to see more information and really consider it. But I also think that it's something that should be asked of our residents, because there could be a lot of residents that live on the canals that say, hey, I don't mind being assessed, just dredge my canal. So again, I think that this should be an additional question on this survey, and that, to your point, could add to, okay, well, if someone answers, yes, I live on a saltwater canal, and yes, I think there should be a special assessment. That could give us some very good insight.
Help me, just so I understand, the additional question is kind of posed how?
Well, something to the effect of, do you think a special assessment should be imposed on those living on a canal to pay for the dredging?
Okay, I'm going to comment on that, but let me get everybody's comments first, or,
And I would just say on that, that's why I was very concerned that I want to make sure we look at every possibility of getting federal or state
Sure.
grants.
Well, of course.
Always.
Because to ask the question that
Yeah.
you're asking, we don't know yet how much money we can actually
We don't.
raise to assist us. So if it was like, if we got to an enormous amount where there was no assistance, and would you mind a $10 million assessment, a special assessment, or would you mind a special assessment that covers $50,000?
okay,
I mean,
and-
that's a different question.
and I feel obligated to ask this, and believe me, I don't want to confuse the issue. So first of all, I think what's being asked by staff today is, do we feel that this initiative rises to the level of inclusion in the current strategic and action plan process? That's number one. But I also feel to staff that this study has taken this problem a bit out of context. Because what we're thinking about, and to your point about wanting to know more, this does not address the ongoing issue of private property seawalls that are not up to snuff, nor does it address vacant lots that do not have seawalls at all, nor does it address liabilities with regard to private property, meaning docks and piers, that could be negatively affected through a dredging process. So there's a whole lot more, which probably makes that number look small. Now, again, what's before us today is, do we have consensus that this should become a strategic action priority? I think that's the question that staff is asking us.
I would say yes.
High level, yes. Now, I have some comments. I know we were only commenting on the survey, so I'll save those, but I do want to get through those. High level, yes, I think this needs to stay on the SAP.
I agree.
Just make sure one of you put it forward, okay?
Well, it's my district, so I'm going to be pushing to keep it
So I
on
can
there
count
and
on
keep it
you
moving
to
forward.
put the strategic action priority
Yes,
forward.
that is
Thank you.
something I committed
And
to, and I'm
everyone else
going to
here has
stick
And I
agreed.
that
think I've
commitment.
already put it
And
on
everyone
my
has
list.
agreed that it deserves that position. Very
Uh,
good. Now, please go back to the survey so we don't get hung up on that.
Yeah, I think on the survey, if we, and again, I'm looking for consensus, I do think it's important, yes, we don't know what that special assessment might be yet, but it needs to be something that we put out there, because if there is a very loud outcry for no, then from a budgetary standpoint, we need to really start thinking about, okay, keep this in the back of your mind, this is something that will need to be funded akin to stormwater utilities. I mean, this is a very big project, or even maybe state appropriation asks. So I do think that this is a threshold question that needs to be addressed.
I'm all in favor of you asking your neighbors if they want to pay for this, so knock yourself out.
Yeah, and
I do.
Councilwoman Pontieri, I do not disagree. My problem is, I don't know how to phrase it with enough detail that people could understand. I mean, you're basically asking, do you want to pay more to get this fixed? I don't know how to phrase it with enough background information. That's my concern. I mean, is it going to change the flavor of the survey? Absolutely not. Will the data that you receive back be significant? I question that. I don't have a problem adding the question. I don't know that it's relevant at this time. It certainly will be relevant in the future. As you've succinctly pointed out, this is going to be a big deal for a very long time. I don't know that you're going to get the public to be able to consider that so new and fresh up front. But I don't have an objection to adding the question.
I guess what I'm looking at too is if we wait and we want to survey the public on it in the future, are we spending more money to send another survey and staff time and all of that when we could just knock it out now?
So, so the questions I'm hearing are, first, do you want to leave the first question in, or do you want to move it to the end? Do you care?
I don't really have,
Okay.
it doesn't matter.
with it where it is.
Okay, let's go to Councilwoman Pontieri's question. Do you want a question about, and staff's going to have to phrase it, are you willing to invest through a special assessment?
If you live on the canal.
If you are a current resident
Because
on
that
a
would be
canal.
where this, that's who would be affected by the special assessment, would be.
Right, it'd be a district.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Does that give you enough to formulate a question that could then come back to each city council member to make sure that the verbiage is correct? Because it's a testy question.
Yes, and then just for clarity, timeline on when you're wanting this survey to go out. What are your expectations?
Well, we can give you instruction at the next meeting, right?
Okay.
If you come back with the question.
Well, right now, we're ongoing with your annual community survey that's out to the public, and that closes here soon, and we'll get the results on May 10th. You know, I just worry about sending out too many surveys, right? There's we want to be mindful of that.
So, do you want to wait a little bit so we don't confuse the two, overlap?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, it can be a part of the strategic action process, which still goes on for quite some time.
I think this is a process that's going to take a while, so I don't think there's any rush to get the
Okay.
survey out by any means.
So will you, acting city manager, will you come back when you feel it's appropriate time with regard to finalizing the survey and give us a projected date when you would send it out, that it would not overlap or be in conflict with any current survey?
Sure.
Very good.
Mayor, I just want to make sure that this survey doesn't delay us moving forward with the rest of this, that we're
Well,
not
I
just
mean,
waiting for a survey.
no, the funding piece, we can start researching
Okay,
today.
right.
Which, that's.
Right,
that's
we don't need a survey
No, that's
to
the
know
key
it's
that
gonna
starts
go.
the engine, no
Yes,
question
thank
about
you.
it.
So Mayor, just for clarity purposes, we heard you that you'll continue this priority in your strategic action plan, and then this scope will be included in your fiscal year 25 budget.
Yeah, let's just be clear on what the strategic action plan priority is, and I believe it would be
Develop a maintenance plan for the saltwater
yes, ma'am,
canals.
there you go. Perfect.
And one other question while you're here. I mean, my understanding from the report we got is we're talking a lot of spot dredging, correct?
There is some spot, yeah.
Yeah,
For
so
the-
that's a lot cheaper than dredging, obviously.
Be
I don't
careful.
know, I'm asking.
So I had an education in that recently. It's not nearly what you think. So just to get to that point where you can spot dredge is huge money.
It is.
And remember that the key to this is not instant gratification. It's not the fix for today. It's the program in perpetuity that maintains this
For tomorrow.
for
And,
future generations,
So we don't
right?
face this
So
situation.
there's no cheap way to get to it. I tried that, it didn't work.
Right,
I got shut down. Okay.
So prior to the survey going out, we will have an idea of what the costs will be. Are you saying, no?
No, you'll know what the questions are. The costs will be determined during your strategic action plan negotiations, debates, and process. You may begin to decide how you'd like to allocate funds or how you may want to break this up into pieces over the coming years. So we won't know that yet. I don't think that's deliverable.
I was just thinking that the residents would probably be interested in, okay, if I'm going to be asked to pay an assessment, what's it going, what assessment am I paying? How much?
I would be very,
What is
I think it
gonna
would be,
cost me?
I think we'd be challenged to have any idea what that could be right now. I don't think it's possible to know that just yet. We can't even easily define the district at this point in time. So the arithmetic is not available to calculate it. However, you could specifically request that we perform some calculations in your strategic action plan priority to start to formulate this priority so that we will define a district. We will then begin to forecast, perhaps, if we agree, what an assessment would be, and then all of the other components with regard to funding opportunities and everything else.
I don't want to give the public any impression that we're agreeing on an assessment today.
No, that's
At
what
all,
I'm trying
okay?
to, no, I'm trying to reel that back in.
I'm not there, and I don't.
We're not there. We're agreed to further discuss it through the strategic action plan priority.
Yeah.
We have all agreed it's a very important initiative for the city to undertake. Now we have to put the nuts and bolts together.
In defense of those residents, they probably pay the highest taxes of
That's
any of our
absolutely right. The
residents.
property values are higher over
Because
there.
they're on those
Yeah.
canals,
Mhm.
and so they're already reaching into their pockets, and so I don't want to give that impression at all, because that's,
I think
I'm
we've been.
looking for
no, no,
federal
I think
money,
we've been
state
very,
money.
very clear about that.
Okay.
Okay. And the press, I know, understands it. Okay.
I'm good.
Good?
And I hope the press that's listening in
Good,
understands
okay.
it too.
I have a couple questions,
Yes,
though.
ma'am.
And I asked these questions specifically because we're talking about, honestly, I don't want to commit to, okay, yes, we're going to dredge, not knowing exactly what the overall cost is going to be. And so when I'm looking at the phases of the contract right now, I kind of feel like we're being asked to commit to a $500 and something thousand contract when we may say stop after phase 2 is concluded. We're just not there yet. We don't have the monies, whatever it may be. And I want us to get there, obviously. But my question is, when I'm looking at page 51 of the packet, which was your design and estimated construction costs, Carmelo, after phase 2 is complete, at the end of phase 2, will we have a good idea of what the cost of dredging will be? Because that phase, according to the contract, that phase will only cost us $46,000. It's much more palatable and for us to say, okay, we can commit to that to figure out what the overall dredging costs will be now, and then perhaps we can see in the future if we even want to go on to phase 3 and phase 4. Because I just don't want to commit a whole $500,000 contract when we may not be ready to commit after phase 2.
Yeah, I think we'll have a much better idea after we finalize that phase 2, which is that, the meetings, right, the pre-design meetings for the agencies. I think once we've wrapped that up, we'll have a much better idea of what the design's going to be, and we can make a little bit better of an adjustment or an estimate as to what the cost could be. So to your point, if it's going to be extravagant and we need to pull the plug on the project at that point, we can and not utilize the rest of it, but.
So then can we confirm with Taylor Engineering that we can maybe, since this is coming back before us in another workshop anyways, that we can maybe adjust the contract to only commit to phase 2, if that's what obviously my colleagues agree to, but the question is, can we go back to Taylor and say, hey, we're only ready to commit to phase 2 right now without committing to a $500,000 contract with them?
Well, when I work on projects and the scopes are broken out like this into phases, I can tell them, yes. But it's always assumed that we can do that we can just scope some of that stuff out.
Okay, because when the contract was included in the packet, and so I just want to make sure that we're not going to get ourselves into a breach of contract issue down the road. So if we can confirm that with them, I know it's not a business meeting, we're not voting to accept the
Okay.
contract, but I would like the information before we do.
And just, if you would footnote also that whatever those costs up to that point are, they still do not include the liabilities and the other potential costs or issues that I mentioned.
I agree. I think that definitely needs to be addressed. So we know that, well, and this is, I guess, something I'm looking for clarification on.
It's hard, here's my point. My point is, it's hard to value this if this can have a significant effect on how much this is.
Well, and to your point, Mayor, there's a certain dichotomy between what a homeowner is responsible to maintain versus what the
Correct.
city is responsible to maintain. So if we can't tell, okay, a homeowner's seawall is their responsibility, but then the city has to come in and dredge a certain amount of the way in, what is that price difference, and is that considered? And so there are a few things that I think
Sure,
are
and to
missing.
Councilwoman Hyder's point about actually extracting some kind of an assessment number, until we know all of these things, it would be foolish to guess or to forecast such a number without more data.
Yeah, because the spectrum is so vast. I mean, it could, yeah, I'm with you.
But the first big step, it becomes a strategic action priority, which I think is what we've all been looking forward to. That means it stays. It is a ongoing part of every budget that we work on. So I think that's wonderful news. And I'm sorry, did you have additional questions?
No, I just want that assurance, because again, if we look at the last page of the contract, it says Taylor Engineering will perform the services described in phases 2, 3, and 4, not to exceed a scope of $506,000. I want to make sure we're not on the hook for all of that. We can kind of carve out that phase 2, get more information, ensure, to the mayor's point, that all information that we need is included in the scope. And then if we decide to move forward from there, to then put more of those monies towards the rest of the contract.
Certainly, yep.
Good?
Yep.
That gives staff direction?
Yes, Mayor.
Very good. All right, if there are no other comments, then I would open up this item to the public. Celia, come on up.
In Pamcos, I live my 1991 in main canals. I know very well how the city council needs to learn that the seawalls are not the responsibility of the city at all. And Mrs. Gursman is doing lately a great job addressing those seawalls that are the responsibility of ours. We all pay for that. I pay for mine. Everybody needs to pay for mine. Forget about seawalls. Don't even mention the seawalls here. Now, my main canal, all these years, and it's still functioning. I mean, I had a big vessel speeding up and down the canal. The main canals don't need anything. They only need the center, 2020. My main canal, everybody speeds up and down the road, no problem. You have those side canals that have a little bit of problem. Besides that, one more thing. Item 5, shown there, it shows very clearly pipelines, corridors. These canals drain the whole city of Palm Coast. And if you don't know it, I'll give you a ride on my car. In our homeowners association, we have the huge pipes, culverts,
Can you speak in the mic?
from across the street, coming from across the street, going under our homes on our right-of-ways and go into the canal. These canals, if you cover that, this city will flood. These canals are drainage for the whole city. And I can show you the manholes we have nearby our houses that take the city. And another thing, if you go to Florida Park Drive, you're gonna see that the Fern Canal comes from the freshwater canal that drains the whole area of the freshwater, goes under Florida Park Drive into the Fern Canal, saltwater canal. Our canals, you need to all learn this. They all drain the whole city. And we're not going to be paying for any dredging that somebody needs on a side canal because they have a little bit of stuff there. Now, if the city wants to address that, they need to address it through a grant for flooding. You know, our canals prevent that this city doesn't flood. My canal goes halfway my lot when we have the king tide. So the people in Palm Coast don't get flooded. You need to learn that. So we are mainly drainage canal, and we will oppose any special assessments for us for something that serves the whole city. You see, everybody uses the road. Some people don't use the road. They don't drive, but they still have to pay for that. Some people think that we use the canals only for our vessels. No, it's not true. It's drainage. If you cover all those huge pipes you see in our seawalls, you know what's going to happen? The city will drain. So please, change what you've been told here and think that they drain the whole city, and the whole city is responsible for that. No special assessment.
Thank you, Celia. Anyone else care to comment on this item at this time? Yes, sir.
Jeffrey Saib. I was looking at this survey, and I just think it would be a little mixed with what the results could be gathered from when you don't have a designation of saltwater canals. Do you use the saltwater canals for kayaking and the freshwater? You're going to have all the people saying, yes, I use the canals. Well, what does that say about the saltwater canals? We're talking about dredging the saltwater canals, right? This isn't something about how to dredge all the canals. I mean, that might be something that's in order because the freshwater canals are probably in the same silted-in condition somewhat as the saltwater canals are because they have had no attention. Sure, the folks come through with the airboats to chop up the algae and they scoop it up, but there's a lot of fertilizers and yard clippings and road, as Ms. Puglia said, road waste going into the freshwater canals also. So I just don't see what this is going to show us about saltwater canal survey, except for the first question. The other thing is, I think the special assessment district would be something that is in order because, to a degree, because it is, the saltwater canals are primarily used by the saltwater canal homeowners. So I think that wouldn't be right to stick the entire cost on us all as a tax or fee increase. For an example, a homeowner in Seminole Woods struggling to pay mortgage and escrow costs should not be financing the homeowners' boats and docks in the saltwater canals. It's not a question of one person over the other. It's just a question of reality. They're not using it, just as this up here will not show us. How many people kayak in the saltwater canals? That might be a question, and then we could make an answer. But in addition to that, at the engineering firm's presentation to the council in August, I commented that the material being removed from the canals cannot be spoil banked, as it most assuredly is a hazardous waste and must be disposed of accordingly, which may add significant but necessary additional costs to the price of dredging. Federal and state environmental protection agencies need to be involved in any testing of the silt to be removed for the presence of hazardous materials. After all, we don't want a Palm Coast version of Erin Brockovich here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other members of the public care to comment at this time? Seeing no one come forward, any final comment from City Council?
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. Before this comes up before us again, is there any way that we can have a slide or two on the contribution of the saltwater canals to the overall drainage system? I think that's important for 2 points. One, as we do consider, okay, is this something that affects the entire network, or is it, more secluded for the public and for City Council? And two, for funding sources, because if we can get monies as a, qualifying this as some type of stormwater project, then obviously we should be trying to do that. So if we could just have that added to the presentation, I think that would be
Just
helpful.
help staff understand what the word contribution means. You asked for a description of what the
contributing areas to what goes in there from the city.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay, you got it?
I got it.
Okay, fair question.
Yeah, and it's not the whole city, by the way.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was, but again, I'm not an engineer. I can't remember everything, but I think that would be beneficial for us and for the public.
And let me just add one thing to your comment, because I think it's pertinent, is that we are not the only city in Florida that has salt canals that are connected to their systems.
Sure.
So I'm just suggesting that those are also, as Taylor will tell you, valuable resources, because they have been experiencing these same issues for the same reasons for a very long time, perhaps longer than the city of Palm Coast has. So let's just keep mindful of what others have done and are doing, and especially where their funding sources may have been generated from. All right, Carmelo, thank you very much.
I was going to
Sorry.
I was going to reemphasize the fact that Councilwoman Pontieri is very right on about this. We need to very clearly distinguish between tidal-controlled canals and then freshwater canals, and about what gets output into the freshwater canals, and how one is a little bit more self-sustaining than the other. One's actually a lot more self-sustaining than the other, and the requirements for us as far as maintenance on them, because I think there's a public misperception on exactly the tidal-controlled canals versus freshwater canals and how they contribute to our stormwater. Thank you, Carmelo.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're now down to presentation number 4, and Counselor, I'm going to, I guess, have you read that in for us?
Here we go. Game time.
Resolution 2024-XX approving amending Resolution 200.
Go ahead and speak as closely into the mic as you can, only so the folks that are hearing your voice for the first time can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, my apologies. Resolution 2024-XX approving amending Resolution 2009-114 by increasing the land development site permitting and inspection fees, amending Resolution 2004-44 by increasing the rental registration fees.
Thank you, council members. Ray Tyner, Deputy Director for Community Development. In the past, not too long ago, City Council had asked us, or directed staff, to go back to reevaluate and look at our development fees. These development fees are associated with, your site plans, master plans, land use items such as rezonings, comp plan amendments, those type of application fees. So we went back. And, as y'all may know, that these fees have not been increased since 2009. So Mr. Nguyen, our senior planner, is going to go through and provide a summary of what our method was to increase the fees. We have a proposal for you today to evaluate, and he will give the staff presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Fong Wing, Senior Planner. What we're going to discuss to you today is basically providing you a proposal on the application fee, development fee, permitting, and inspection schedule, including with the rental registration fee as well. So a brief background here that back in 2009, Council adopted Resolution 2009-114, land development fee schedule and site permitting and inspection fee, as amended twice after that. In 2004, City Council adopted Resolution 2004-44 for rental registration fees. So fees have not increased since 2009 and 2004 respectively. So it's been over 14 years remaining flat. So last year, City Council requested staff to review development fee and bring back a proposal. Typically, how it will pan out is that we would go through a study. We would basically hire a third-party consulting in order to provide that proposal to you. In absence of that, what we have done is that we looked at the consumer price index over the last 14 years or so, and using that as the basis to provide you the new proposed fees. Most of the proposed fees would reflect the increase. It is 43.4% over the last 14 years or so. There are a few adjustments and into a couple of the application fees. And also we're going to introduce to you some new fees to be incorporated. So for example, there are 3 examples here. Master site plans currently is about $400 application fee. We'll increase it to $574. That reflects the 43.4%. And the technical site plans also is a $400 application fee, and we increase that to $574. Subdivision master plan, $250, and we increase that to $359. In terms of percentage, is high, but if you look at the fee that we establish are extremely low already, and so it's a modest increase as proposed. And we also have a proposal on new categorical fees for your consideration. Looking at the administrative fees, we're looking at over the last 2 years or so, the city incurred basically the burden to pay for these type of services. For attorney's fee, you're looking at plat reviews, land transaction agreements, deeds, easements, and approximately we pay about $25,000 or so for this type of service. And second-party survey fees also in the terms of about $30,000 per year. So what we're proposing is that we're going to charge the applicant the actual cost, and that's our proposal. Rental fee, rental registration, we propose to increase to $35 from the $5 that we currently have. And annexation, we also propose a fee of $1,000. Right now, we don't have any of those fees at all when unincorporated land annexed into the city. And then the other one are basically dictated by statutes like community development districts creation or modification or expansion is basically a $15,000 application fee. And also, we haven't encountered this in the city, is there's going to be a time we're going to have a DRI process build-out agreement. So it's not a termination or abandonment, but it's basically a build-out. And a build-out of a DOI takes a lot of staff's time, to fine-tune it, make sure that everything has been in compliance. So that's the reason why we're proposing the fee. And here's a couple charts so you can see the comparison within our area. And in blue, on the far left, is basically the Palm Coast. And you can look at different categories: preliminary plat, final plat, comprehensive plan, large and small, and flume amendment, rezoning, master plan development, and master site plans. Overall, you look at the blue bar, we are relatively at the lower end of the fee charges among our peers or among our area. We didn't engage into comparing with other region of Florida. They are extremely higher. For example, like South Florida, we looked at it, but we didn't want to bring it to your attention.
May I ask, have they completed evaluations on whether or not they should be increasing their fees recently? Are we are we just the last one to come to the table? For instance, like, did Port Orange just bring their costs up here, or were they historically always this high? Just for curiosity.
That has been historically, they have charged that fees. Yeah. So, and here is a comparison, another chart to show you that if you move forward, reflecting the CPI, this is the increase. And if you compare it with our peers around the region, is relatively also very low in terms of the fee. So that's the proposal that we provided to you, and we provided you also copies of the existing application fees and all the applicable fees that we introduced to you. So with that, staff is open for questions.
Fong, I'm just going to have a question. When this comes back to us at business meeting, I'm going to ask you to somehow give me an idea of how much more it's going to cost a homeowner to buy a house.
How much more?
I mean, these fees translate into a higher cost to buy a home.
Typically,
Okay.
that would be a difficult answer, but these would be reflected into the builder's fees. So, for example, if I'm a house searching for a place to buy a house, I would not know what the impact fees is. I would not know what the application fee is. I only know the bottom line is the price of the house.
Okay, so I'm suggesting that most of these fees, and Mr. Tyner chime in if you like to, are going to be passed directly to the consumer.
Yeah, I mean, most of these fees that we're talking about now are the development rated for the preliminary plat, final plat, and to tell you the truth, it's pretty minimal of an increase. It's not.
That's what I'm trying to get to. In other words, we're not sticking it to the new homeowner is what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Mr. DiLorenzo, do you want to comment?
You want to comment?
Exactly how many dollars?
Mayor, City Council, good morning. Jason DiLorenzo, Chief of Staff. Mayor, I understand your question completely. I wanted to just start with the differentiation that this is not the building permit fees, but on the planning side. So just keep that straight, and that, these are nominal increases. 44%, not exactly nominal, but really for the cost of these. When you spread that over a subdivision worth of houses, it's really tiny.
Okay. Yes. I just wanted to clarify that so that everybody was clear. Does City Council have questions?
That was my question,
okay.
so thank you.
Mayor, may I also propose that you can move forward to approve what we propose as basically based on CPI index, or you can approve that for, let's say, a year timeline, and then ask staff to basically go through a study in order to come back to you as well, too. So that's your options, yeah.
And just to add, with this proposal too, we were also going to write the ordinance where annually the CPI would kick in, so it'll be a kind of a nominal to catch up with that, just to let you know.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. So I appreciate you all doing this. Bless you. I specifically appreciate us not paying for a study on it and going the route of the CPI. That was a very wise choice, so thank you to staff for taking that route. I'm in favor of an annual CPI increase as well, because if we don't do that, then we're just going to find ourselves in the same situation again. A couple questions. If these are on the planning side, what fund do these fees go into? Is it the building?
The general fund.
General fund. So these are general fund dollars that can help our general fund that directly will impact taxes, essentially.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's great. As far as the actual fees, I had a question on the flume. So if we look at the bar chart that you had put on, Fong, with the proposed fees, yes. It looks like the flume small scale, flume large scale, flume and rezoning is still rather low. Did you all just want to apply basically the same percentage increase across the board and not really kind of cherry pick which ones were going to be increased a little bit more? And I ask because they're still pretty low. We've had a lot of rezonings. So I'm wondering if we're missing out, and master site plan actually as well, if we look at that one too. Are we missing out on funding that we should be capitalizing on at this time and proposing something a little bit more, even if it does require a different percentage?
Typically, we would recommend across the board instead of pick and choose. Only the obvious, fee that are extremely low, then we want to basically bring it to a reasonable amount. But yes, the flume, the rezoning are still very low. So that's up to your discretion to ask us to bring back that.
Okay.
We can focus on those areas and then adopt all the other application fees reflecting the CPI.
So, Mr. DiLorenzo, do you want to give us a magnitude on that? Like, are we getting any dollars here, or are we better off keeping the method?
Well, I would worry about the method. That's what I wanted to point out, is that to remain defensible without a study, being consistent across the board is important. Now, if you thought by policy that, this wasn't enough, or you wanted to make changes that way, I would just ask that you remain consistent.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So if we were to do the increases without a study, we'd have to justify the methodology, which would, okay, I understand.
And perhaps be challenged.
Right, which that juice may not be worth the squeeze.
Yeah, and as you heard, staff found this to be the most defensible method. They, calculated CPI over the period of time and applied it.
Okay, I can understand that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Questions?
I have.
So I'm looking for consensus for staff. It sounds to me like, please, I'm sorry.
Forgot about me? Okay, I just have a question about the rental fee registration
Yes,
for landlords. Is that a one-time fee that they pay?
yes, that's a one-time fee.
Which,
Annual
It's
fee.
the annual fee?
Yeah.
that's an annual fee that they pay? So each year, they have to pay an additional $35 on their rental properties?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
It's funny, I don't recall that, because I was a property
It
manager at one time.
used to be 5.
I remember, it used to be $5, but I don't recall them paying it every year.
Uh-oh.
Uphill
It
both
was.
ways.
Okay, I didn't recall that.
I won't
But even with that being said, I think $35 too is still a little bit low, and maybe should be increased to like $50, because we have a lot of corporations that are coming in and purchasing properties just for rentals, and they're renting them out. So maybe we could increase that fee just to maybe $50 annually. That's just a thought.
So just to help with that, so the magnitude, again, the number of total rentals is how many, roughly? Do you have a round number?
About a little bit over 9,000.
Times $15, okay.
Yeah, 35, yeah.
Well, would that require another study, or can we make that decision as council? Because I agree with you. I think 50 is a fair number.
That particular one, that was a separate item that we incorporated
okay.
this. that we're not using the CPI on that, so that would be a city council discretion on that.
But it also would affect every resident that owns an investment property as well, not just corporate people, just,
Oh, I understand that.
and I don't think we have any data to tell us whether there are more rentals in Palm Coast that are owned by residents versus corporate owners. I don't know the answer to that.
I
So
don't know the answer
Yeah,
either, but I think.
so you're gambling here on who you are sticking it to.
Well, I don't think that we're really sticking it to
Okay.
anybody. I
Okay.
just believe that
Okay.
$50 annually for a rental registration is not high.
Only
That's not-
because it's going to be passed directly through to
gonna
the
go to the
renter, to the
residents?
tenant.
And, okay, it's going to be passed on.
Of course.
I thought about that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but in the back of my mind, I'm always trying to defend housing affordability to some extent. So your rent just goes up $50.
Well,
A
no.
year.
I was gonna say, that's the whole year, yeah.
A year. Still $50. It is what it is.
So
Okay.
I have a question on that too. Is that also on the CPI, or would that remain constant?
No, that's not on the CPI. And just to add a little bit of information, currently, with our $5 fee, we're generating approximately $45,000 in our general fund. With this change and increase it to $35, we would have collected $317,000, almost $318,000.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good increase into our general fund.
So, just so I understand, we're presently at $5,
Yes.
and we want to jump to 35, just so we can take in more money.
And this is suggesting to go to 50.
Why not just leave it at 5? We have a lot of folks that have a hard time paying rent now. I think
It's not
people have
coming
been
from the
beat up
renter.
enough, huh? I mean,
It's-
what's our increase in cost that justifies this? Are we spending more money
Sure.
on something?
Everything that we do costs more because of
Well,
inflation.
but
Remember, we haven't changed this in 14 years.
Now, I understand, but we're collecting this fee. Are we spending more money to collect this fee?
Yeah, I mean, our people are making more money and our operation costs more every year because of inflation, sure.
All right.
And
So-
you're charging more money.
Well, we're charging more money.
Well, the landlords are certainly charging more money, I can tell you that.
Right,
but,
right. But we're not a landlord,
No.
so.
And to your point about, and I brought up the point, so I'll be responsible, that, yes, so rents will go up, but, going up $15 over the course of 12 months is,
All right. yeah,
tolerable.
Better than $50.
well, no, I'm talking about the $50.
$50.
$50 over 12 months.
So you guys are talking 50, you're talking 15.
No,
You're talking
35.
35.
And Councilwoman Hyder suggested
15,
for our
okay.
discussion that it go to 50. So 50 divided by 12 would be
Less
what
than
you would,
five.
right, which would be the rent increase.
All right.
Because these costs do get passed through. There's no question about it.
And
So,
everybody really, every landlord doesn't raise their rent every year either.
That's true, too. So that is true. Depends
There's
on.
some that don't raise
There's some that don't.
well, it depends on the lease and a lot of things. yeah.
And who you're dealing with and how long they've been a tenant. Are they a good tenant? Have you had any
Right.
issues? So
Absolutely.
on and so forth. And that's hard for landlords because their insurance keeps going up, their taxes go up. I get it. I'm good with the 35. I think 35 is reasonable.
Based on the numbers, Mr. Tyner, that you just gave us, what we were bringing in versus what we will be bringing in, I'm also okay with the 35. If the consensus is to go to 50, I'm not really vehemently opposed to it, but I also think going to 35 is sufficient. My one question that I had, though, is in the ordinance, are we able to work in a review process every 4 to 5 years to
Okay.
look at all of these fees? Because I understand we're going to put a CPI on the planning fees. I think that's great, but maybe so that we're not, 15 years down the road again going, oh, hey, should we look at those fees again? Working into the ordinance, another review process every so many years.
So
We can add that to this ordinance for the development.
I think that'd be
reviews
prudent.
that we would review.
That's a good suggestion, and Councilwoman Hyder, so if you're willing to consider the 35, then we're going to build in a review process. You'll have a shot at putting it to 50, in like a second phase. So we're
Okay,
kind of being
I'm
a
in
Solomon
agreement
to
with that.
split the baby on
I mean,
that.
I'm not out to hurt anybody.
Right.
but I'm just,
Okay, no, I mean,
it
no.
just doesn't seem
absolutely.
like much money for all that.
I understand. Councilman Clufus.
Yep, I mean, it doesn't seem like that much money, but at the end of the day, when we have 9,000 rental apartments, units, homes across the city, it's substantial.
Sure.
You know, you guys said it, $40,000, say $45,000, say potentially, you know, $300X thousand dollars. So I think that's a good thing in the long-range planning. I think, is there a number that we project that in total, this will increase our general fund dollars?
For the application fees, we have not have that calculations yet, so.
Okay.
But I think the 35 or 50, we can bring back to you the next hearing, the justification for the cost of the rental registration. We definitely can find that.
So I will say this, in 2022, we generated just with development fees for applications, $340,000. In 2023, we generated $360,000. So if we add, you know, the percent increase,
Sure,
whatever
understood.
that math is, so it would definitely
Makes sense.
add to our general fund.
My final question
sure.
is, just to make sure that this is for posterity, I see that St. Johns County doesn't charge for some of their large comp plans. We're not at, you know, the mercy of losing big projects because of these fees, are we?
No, not at all. I actually had a discussion with FCARD, Flagler County Association of Responsible Development, VCARD. I had some members that kind of sent this to, and we had some discussion, and no, I don't believe that's the case. I think,
I wouldn't think so either.
we provide, you know, just tooting our horn a little bit with the city and our staff. Our level of service that we provide for application reviews in a short time frame compared to other municipalities, I think we're providing a very good service for the fees that we are getting for
Excellent.
that.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the question, but thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman. So let me try to propose staff direction here. So, and I'm going to put in my own feeling, but hear me out for a second. I would personally like to accept staff's recommendation on the rental fee of $35, adding to it Councilwoman Pontieri's ordinance inclusion that this fee be re-looked at in, what would it be? What had you suggested?
5 years.
In less than that,
I mean, 4 years maybe.
I was going to say in 2 years.
What I try to base it off of is
Because
how
of
often
growth.
do we review impact fees? You know,
Yeah.
to try to keep it on a somewhat consistent schedule, so we're
Yeah.
not completely driving staff nuts.
Okay.
So you know, anywhere in 4 to 6 years, I think is fine, but it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure we're not letting it slip through the cracks.
Right, and that way you get a chance to revisit it and raise it if it's appropriate at that time. Would that be acceptable to you?
That's fine, that's fine.
Do we have consensus on that direction to staff? Staff understand the direction?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
We thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment?
Celia Puglisi, 1991. In here, okay, first of all, I totally agree, $50 would be great. But we are forgetting here that all these properties that are non-home exempted because they are rentals, they pay double the taxes that we pay. You know that? You all know that, right? You better be very aware, because those people complain about how much higher the taxes are. So at this point, in order for them not to receive a sticker shock, especially on election time, right? I would rather by now would be, because I know I'm going to hear from people that I know, oh my God, from 5 to 35 would be more acceptable than going from 50. There will be more income. This is how I see it as a resident, and I don't have a rental, okay? So one other thing is that you were mentioning, regarding, put the graph from the other cities, please. Look at the graph. We charge minimal comparison to Banel, Flagler Beach, and Daytona. We need to charge proper permit fees. Now, my question is this. They are saying these are CPI, proposed review fees. These proposed review fees are the same as permit fees? Are the same thing? Permit and review fee, these proposed fees are the same as permit, Mayor? Because you know what? No. Because I remember a couple of years ago, Mr. Di Lorenzo came here and he said, oh, on our permit fees, we have too much money as per the Florida law, and the Florida law only allows me to have so much money, so we have to give this money back to the developers. Is this the same thing? I
No.
mean, I don't understand that.
No, it is not.
No? Okay, very good. So please, let's charge logically for what the other cities are charging, because this is what it should be. I mean, people come here from California, okay? And they sold our 800,000 home there. They come here at 2.5 million home. People come from New York, New Jersey. I mean, it's more expensive. When they come here, these prices of houses are a real bargain to all of us. I came from out there too. So let's charge them the permit fees that we need, so we have more income for the things we need, for what you need, Mrs. Poncheri, on this budget. So let's charge the people. Don't be so sorry about people here paying more when they come. I got a bargain when I came here. Everybody does get a bargain from another state, even from Colorado. So let's please charge them higher fees as the other.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment on this item at this time? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Back to the dais for any final comments. Staff, I think.
I just have one last.
I'm sorry.
I have one last question.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead. With the proposed increased fees, are we covering our costs for staff?
For these fees?
Correct.
No.
We're still not covering costs for staff. So that's an issue. Do we know how short we are? And I guess the reason I ask is because, in your opinion, would it be worth doing a study if we're still not covering staff costs?
You know, we can, for the next budget year, of doing a study to see. I know we did one way back when. I can't even remember the date offhand, but
2007.
your typical fees for all counties, all cities will not cover the cost. The application fees will not cover the cost. The philosophy has always been that you're doing an investment in a community. You have professional staff that are looking at the application, making sure that we have quality development, that it meets our land development code. And basically, the philosophy has always been that you are getting those tax revenues at the end of it, to help generate those funds and those fees that we get for the city. So it's very, very typical. There is not one municipality or county in the state of Florida that I know of that their application fees cover the cost of their planning division or their development fees.
Okay, I got to stew on that. I'm good right now.
But think about the tax side of that, so it's an investment in
I
the
get it, and
future
that's why I
tax
said I have
revenue.
to
So
stew on
stew-
it
yeah, I hear you.
before
I
I
get it.
make an
I get it.
opinion, but
Yeah.
I am going to
Okay.
think about that.
All right, so staff has their direction. You good?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Vice Mayor, did you have something?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm good.
Good. Thank you very, and Frank, make sure you redo the bar graph with the new numbers, so it's easy for us to see where we stand for the next presentation, if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we move to our final public participation, so I would ask if there are any members of the public that would like to comment on any item not previously discussed in today's meeting. Please come forward.
Jeremy Davis, P section. Just want to make a FOIA request. I would like to know how many rezonings there have been since the year of 2022.
Thank you for your comment. On something new and different. Correct.
I'm going to be asking, please, the burn banning on city limits.
You hit that one already.
Yes, I know. but I
Okay,
remind
thank you.
Please, okay?
Thank you, Celia. Anyone else? With that, I will come to city council members. Any matters that were not on today's agenda?
I have
Vice
nothing.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pontieri, I have nothing. Councilwoman Hyder.
I only wanted to make a comment on Jeffrey Saib's comment and also Celia Puglisi. With Jeffrey Saiva, and I only caught the end of it because I was coming from the restroom, that we should come up here and hit the ground running and know. Well, as a new council member, I don't see where that's possible. Because I'm sure that each and every one of us, from the very beginning, we didn't know everything when we set up here. Am I correct?
Kathy, we
Vice
appreciate,
Mayor?
Kathy, all of us, we appreciate your comment.
Okay.
It goes to the heart, I understand.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Kathy, 100%, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to absorb.
There is. There's a lot to learn. And-
We're still not quite there, so.
And we will always be learning.
Of course, I hope so.
Okay. And Celia Puglisi, I just wanted to comment on the pool situation, and I am hoping that we can rectify that because there are a lot of people missing out on being able to use that pool here in Palm Coast. And also with the elections coming up, I'd like to have it put on the agenda that maybe we discuss a simple handbook for incoming council members or possibly mayor, whatever, just to give them some direction on what they can expect and where we're going, being new here on the council.
So may I suggest that we start with the city council meeting rules, the charter, and Robert's rules as a beginning to which we can then add, I'm just trying to put some corners on the box for staff, because I'm guessing if I ask the attorneys that the encyclopedia of books to get you up to speed would be voluminous.
Well, the budget alone.
And
We
that
need
too.
somewhere to start.
No, so if we start there, we can build on it, if that would be acceptable.
Yes,
Okay, very
as
good.
long as we start
No,
somewhere.
that's be a starting point, and then we can add to it, okay? We'll put it in a big 3-inch binder, so we can continue to add pages to it. How's that? Very good. All right, with that, any other city council member comments today?
I have no comments besides I've been frequenting the Southern Recreation Facility and its, or the Southern Recreation Center, and it's been phenomenal. So I just wanted to tip my hat to staff, and no other comments.
Very good. Then with that, I would go to city attorney. So I guess we have to ask, how was your first day?
It was a pleasure, happy to be here.
Good, enough said. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Acting city manager.
Mayor, City Council, on your calendar for Thursday evening is the UNF MedNexus Innovation Challenge. We look forward to that continued partnership with the University of North Florida. It starts at 5 p.m.
And if I could just add, the challenge given to the competitors, which are students, is social media addiction, which for any of you that have followed the state legislative session is an item which is in the news today. So it should be a very exciting moment to hear how our younger folks feel about this problem, and more importantly, what they think we might be able to do about it. So very interesting. So thank you for bringing that up. And with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do I have a second?
Absolutely.
Second from Councilman Clufus, so we are adjourned.
Okay, good work. Already, Mom Spaghetti, you made it through.
You have those documents. City council meeting.